Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles.
Nothing like the applause of our adoring fans to give me a little jolt and a wake up.
Indeed. Personally, I have tea. But also the adoring fans are also great. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles. I am your host, Roddycat. You can find me at Roddycat on Twitter. You can find me News Nerds Need on Twitter. You can also find me at CB Caps on Instagram.
South Carolina with Columbia down the way.
And that sound effect comes from none other than our man in Brooklyn's finest, one Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram.
What's up, everybody?
Indeed, I'm actually glad I didn't say that because I figured that probably would have been one of the polls he had he had gone with.
That's right.
First of all, I guess I'll right off the top though. Well, actually, I'll get into the rest of this real quick. Sorry, before I say what I was about to say, and that was also for me to cover up what I just did. But you can find this here program on the Cold Slither Podcast Network. That's cspn.us.
Do it today.
You could also find this here podcast on your podcast perusal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or the Cold Slither Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. And I guess speaking of SoundCloud, if you're watching the show on SoundCloud, you will probably note that the episode from last week has been split into two for some reason. I think SoundCloud was having a technical issue, and I guess for some reason it just went up that way, or it got split up that way for a reason. So, but hey, enjoy it either way. And if not, you can always, I believe the file is up singularly on the other places mentioned, or at least on. Actually, I should probably check that before I've said that thing, but it should be up on the site in one single file. Regardless, we're also recording live on the Twitter, or on the tweets, on the Twitches. That's twitch.tv/Comic Book Chronicles.
It sounds very similar.
Yeah, kinda. And your audio is kind of ducking out for some reason. But also, we are streaming live on youtube.com/the Click Nation. That's DKLIQNATION. So welcome everybody from both of those places. We folks are going to start off with. We normally start off with the books of the week, but we're going to pivot a little early into. Not necessarily cinematic news, but a little bit of Mandalorian talk. But before I even say that, I almost totally forgot to mention that Happy Thanksgiving to everybody who celebrated, or Happy Turkey Day, or Happy Indigenous People Mourning Day, or something, or whatever. So people have been saying. But regardless, that's why we didn't record on Thursday like we normally do. But we said this last week. Hopefully, your day was well spent and probably well fed.
Hopefully you were safe, and hopefully, we all come out of this without too much of a surge, but that's probably hoping for too much. But yeah, I've got leftovers in my refrigerator. I hope you do too.
Well, yeah, exactly. And hopefully the leftovers are that you have are, versatile. Let's say. You can use that turkey for a few different things. That stuff in the cranberry, you can make sandwiches, yada, yada, yada. You know what to do. Or if you, as I know, a couple of people went a little bit non-traditional and had like lasagna and whatever. So shout out. It's all good, regardless of whether, you spend the day, If you're in the U.S., being thankful. If you're otherwise, then it's just a Thursday or whatever the case may be. Hopefully your day was good all the way. But regardless, we are going to start off with talking about this week's and last week's episodes of The Mandalorian. We'll probably, if you want not to be spoilered, probably duck ahead to probably a good, let's say, 20 minutes.
Yeah, just about. I'm gonna ring the spoiler bell, but yeah, you're gonna need to jump ahead because we're gonna talk about 2 episodes this week, both episodes 4 and 5, or chapters 12 and 13, respectively.
Right, and usually, and there's usually a spoiler tag like right before the audio anyway, which I probably should try to put on the video, but I'll think about that at some other time. So, episode 4, aka chapter
12.
12. Thank you. I was like, wait, I'm mixing them up.
1 second.
There we go. So actually, I mean, this one, like, yes, there's some things as we talked about before the show. There are some revelations that came out in this particular episode, but the bigger one is the one that is the one from this week that just dropped tonight as of this recording. But brief strokes are that, after the events of trying to get his ship fixed and not that well, dang Quarians and Mon Calamari don't know. Well, excuse me, there was the Mon Calamari actually who messed up, who didn't quite fix up his ship.
They use duct tape and baling wire. Like,
basically.
That's literally what.
Basically, there was a nautical theme going on in the ship that wasn't very much appreciated. But we go into this episode with trying to get Baby Yoda to do a little wiring job in a space that's too small for him, and that was a very cute scene, but also potentially I was like, oh Lord, don't let the kid be shocked, and yeah, things happened anyway. But it was cute. So finally, they were like, okay, well, that's not going to happen. So we need to get the ship fixed. We're going to end up going back to a place where we've been before, which was Navarro, where we get met with one Grief Karga and Cara Dune, which I'm just going to go ahead and put this out of the way right now. This episode would have been a lot bit better without so much Gina Carano in it, but that's for totally other reasons, if you've been paying attention to social media for. Outside of that, she's actually good, but that's beside the point. She's whatever, terrible people, terrible. But yeah, so we see a fight scene. Well, we thought we were gonna see because we go back to where the armorer was, and we see some. I can't remember the name of that race. That are basically looting the place where the armorer was at the end of last season. And I meant to look that up, and I totally did not. But regardless, we see some folks looting the place, and we see when Cara Dune comes in and bust up the looting racket that was going on here. And she also meets up with a new little weasel-looking friend, another species that I don't know too much about also. I don't know if that's new to the Star Wars series, but it looks kind of like a little ferret, a little furry ferret-looking thing. But then we get title card, and then we get to the Mandalorian landing, where it's like, I need repairs, and like, cool, you need repairs, we need something done, and they got this mission to go to this, very convenient Imperial base that just so happens to be not too far away. That it needs to be cleared out so they can get the rest of the Imperial folks out of there, so that the Navarro can be cleared. Because apparently they've taken lengths to clean up the place, and the place looks like this is thriving so far. So, little hesitation, but the Mandalorian agrees to go on this mission. Leaves the baby Yoda with in a school that was set up. And of course he gets into a little mischief there, a little bit later on with this other kid and some. I'm assuming that's candy. I don't even know what that was. That kid was eating. Looked like a big piece of chalk. I
think it looked like I was about to say it looked like a recolored macaroon. It looked like a cookie. So
Yeah, because at first when he was eating it out of the thing, it kind of looked like what, like a bigger version of those not Smarties, but whatever those bigger versions of Smarties, like the I can't remember.
like an actual type of candy. No,
Yeah,
I actually read that to be like a roll of cookies. Like something that you would normally find packaged in, like a to go, for kids,
like
for
a
their
sleeve
lunch
of
bags.
yeah,
Yeah, so like a 6-pack of Oreos or cookies or whatever. So
sure,
that's why I interpreted that particular snack food. So
and it makes
when
sense.
right, so when the child has too many of these cookies, let's say,
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. So
there's
yeah,
a
so
action he has.
yeah, so yeah, so Baby Yoda has his little, but he eventually rests rest these cookies, candies, whatever that thing was, from the other kid, which was kind of cute. Anyway, we go back to the mission at hand. The Mandalorian, Grief, and Kara go off to the thing with this other character from, I think, the first episode of the Mandalorian that he caught.
Right. I believe he was the very first bounty that we are introduced to
Yeah.
in the show. So it's kind of funny that he comes back. This is wait, this isn't Horatio Sands' character,
Yes, it is.
is it?
Yeah, it is.
It is.
I had totally forgotten about that because I thought it was John Favreau because it kind of sounded like him, but I was like, no, that was Sands.
No, I was about to say. Well, I was about to say though they killed off John Favreau's character in Clone Wars, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, but he could have him doing something else, especially under makeup and whatnot. But
under his own direction.
I know, basically. Back. I mean, hey, it's not the first time it's happened with folks, so especially in this series. Hence the next. Well, yeah, hence this episode because actually I'm glad you mentioned that because this episode was directed by Carl Weathers, who plays Grief Karga. So anyway, so they all go to this base, and there's and long story short, they pretty much finished their mission by trying to blow up the place because it's next to a lava thing, and so they go in there. It was like, well, we're gonna cause the machine to short out, so therefore the lava will make the place blow up because it needs to be cold, and that's that. But of course, they meet up with some stormtrooper resistance, but also not before finding out that, well, we basically found out without getting too said before, we were kind of already going through it. Basically, we found out what Moff Gideon is wanting Baby Yoda for, and there's a couple of competing theories out there as to what, and they both could be. Honestly, there's nothing wrong with both of them being pretty much in one to the same. But there's.
I was about to say, go finish your thought, and then, well, we should talk about, since we rang the spoiler bell, we should talk about what the Doctor character from the first episode of The Mandalorian, or the first and second, I think, episodes of The Mandalorian, reveals.
Right.
And that's what leads to these theories.
Right. Well, yeah, basically, like I pretty much just said it without going through the long story, but yes. So, yeah, they come across a holo vid of the Doctor from the first season that was working with, was that Werner Herzog's character?
Yeah.
But yeah, in the beginning, that started this kind of whole thing off, and he was basically reporting to Moff Gideon about the failures of what project they're doing, because when the Mandalorian and company came along, they were in this lab looking place. They come to find out that this base was not necessarily a forward operated base, but a lab working on a secret project, and there was a bunch of tubes with looks like they were growing soldiers. There's been one theory out there that was saying that this could also be part of the program that led to Snoke, and that is a prevailing theory, because basically what happens was the doctor said to say, hey, the test subjects that we were using with Baby Yoda's blood, which is why they needed Baby Yoda, because he has a high M count, and if you don't know what that is, we don't, that's a whole nother thing. That's a thing with Star Wars that we really don't like to talk about too much. But
reared its ugly head again after the prequel.
Exactly, but so the subject with the high M count, which would in this case would be Baby Yoda, they didn't have a whole lot of blood doings, and all of the tests that they have done, the projects that they have done with said blood, haven't quite worked it out, with the exception of one. But even that one kind of didn't work out for that long. And like I said, this is leading some people to speculate that it might be, like I said, the program that led to end up Snoke being around. But there's another prevailing theory, which we'll get to in a second, because they find out this information. They get beset by stormtroopers trying to get out of the base because they only had a limited time to get out of the base. They finally got out of the base. Basically, the Mandalorian goes to get Baby Yoda because he's in danger. He was still in danger from them, him being kind of out in the open and while they were out on the way. So while they were doing that, we see Grief Kara and this other character whose name I'm not sure, getting away from the stormtroopers through this empty lava bed, only to be caught up with being chased by TIE fighters, which they fight off at least one. But then get saved by the Mandalorian in his now fixed Razor Crest, and leading into the end of the episode, which ends off with Moff Gideon getting a report about said base getting blown up, and that which you kind of knew in early on in the episode when the Mandalorian was getting his ship fixed. Somebody put one of the people that was fixing the ship put a tracker on the ship. So we found out that happened. We found out that Moff Gideon finds out about the base, but we also see in the background while he's getting this information, two columns of Death Troopers, which we haven't seen. Well, we have seen technically, but Rogue One, and if you've been reading the comics, then they've shown up in a couple other places. But we see lines up of Death Troopers, which leads to the other theory that, as Agent 70 said before the program, that he read the theory that they might be trying to use Baby Yoda's blood to make Force-sensitive stormtroopers, or in this case, Death Troopers, who are already dead in the first place. So they've already been able to resurrect folks to use as troopers. So that's what the Death Troopers are all about. But they're now trying to see if they can make them Force sensitive also. So that is the other theory that is going along. Both could be true. So, and that's pretty much how that episode goes. I don't know if you had anything else to add on that.
Only that the chase scene was pretty fun. Once Grief Karga, Cara Dune, and Mithril, the guy they captured.
Yes.
It was a pretty good chase scene that evolved from speeder bikes. Once they escape, they go from being chased by speeder bikes. That's the that's the vehicle that showed up in Clone Wars that was like a proposed.
It's basically a transport vehicle / prisoner transport. Yeah.
The prototype toy that never made it to be a toy, but now it's been introduced into Star Wars canon by Clone Wars and now The Mandalorian. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, that chase scene was pretty fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed that too. And somebody said it was like, there's something very somebody made this mention on Twitter talking about chase scenes in Star Wars they're kind of soothing. They kind of are, also, because they're just fun. Just the sounds and the speeding up and the speeders going off, and of course you have the stormtroopers that eventually wreck,
right,
or get shot down.
Right, and the sound of the TIE fighters in the atmosphere. It's kind of
yeah, like all of that, like everything about chase scenes in Star Wars are pretty great normally, especially because of the sounds. So that's pretty much that episode, because we at the end of it we basically get to see the Razor Crest, because even after everything is over and and before we get the thing with Moff Gideon. The Mandalorian is like, I'm out. we got to get to this planet that that we end up on with this next episode that came out today.
Right. So in chapter 11, Bo-Katan had given the Mandalorian a goal or a place to get to in order to reach a certain Jedi, or someone who actually says in Clone Wars, "I am no Jedi." And I was waiting for that line this episode.
I'm glad you bring it up. We'll bring that up at the end of this, because yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was a point that kind of got me too. I'm sitting here like, wait, we know full well from the, and this was so chapter 13, episode 5. Of The Mandalorian, which is this week's episode as of the airing that just came out today. Written and directed by Dave Filoni. So there is that.
Right. Shout out to Dave Filoni, the co-creator of Ahsoka Tano.
Exactly. Who shows up very early on in like we don't even get any build up to it. She's like, no, here we go. Boom.
Yep, exactly. The reveal is right off the top. So
which I'm gonna go ahead and say, I don't know. So in Star Wars video games, particularly the Old Republic, there's classes of Jedi and Sith, and I'm just going to say, for those who know that MMO, or even Knights of the Old Republic, I guess, Ahsoka would make a pretty good Shadow, Jedi Shadow. Even though I don't think that was technically what she did, because obviously we know her as being pretty much up front in the battle, most of the time. But regardless, we see her, in the shadows, taking out some folks trying to find her in these very spooky looking woods. And of course, Ahsoka Tano is being played by Rosario Dawson, which I'll touch on that in a few minutes, because I know there's been some things about, or potential things about that, let's just say, and that we kind of talked about last week, or whatever it was. Regardless, she's pretty much taking out these people and ends up at this gate of this town, where she's talking to this person whose name we don't get right off the bat, but she is who we find out is the magistrate of this town, and she's you might say she's holding this town hostage, I guess you could say. Ahsoka's looking for some information from this person. This person's like, how much is that information worth? These people don't mean anything to me. You might not, don't come around here no more, basically. If you care anything about these people. Ahsoka's like, I'll be back in a day, which for Ahsoka, that's restraint. But then again, she has grown, so since the even during the end of the Clone Wars, let's be honest. But
hey, let's get serious. We're actually post Rebels at this point, so Ahsoka's come away from when we were first introduced to her.
Exactly. So, which also still goes back to that point that you just made too, because like even in Rebels, she's like, that's when she was pretty much saying like, I'm no Jedi, but in this they kind of, they're kind of not really laying on it too much, but at the same time, it's like they're not saying that much about that part about it. But regardless,
well, there's ways that it comes into play, right? So we can get when we'll talk about it when we get to that part. Go on.
Right. So, basically, the Mandalorian comes on, it gets to the planet. He also ends up at this town and gets propositioned by this magistrate person, who offers up as payment a spear made of pure Beskar, which apparently it might as well be adamantium in the, or not necessarily adamantium, but probably vibranium, I guess, at this point. I don't know, of the Star Wars universe, because Beskar is pretty much one of the few things that lightsabers don't cut through. Mm-hmm. But regardless, which, of course, if you know the history of Mandalorians and Jedi, that's all of that bears off, so that's nothing new. But she propositions that. She basically says, "Hey, there's this Jedi out there causing me problems. Go kill her." And of course, the Mandalorian is looking for a Jedi, so he goes out there to look for her, but not necessarily to kill her. They meet, almost square off for a second, but don't happen. but it doesn't happen. Ahsoka gets introduced to the child, Baby Yoda, who gets a connection to because obviously she has seen one of its kind before. We also end up finding out, and as I told Agent 70 beforehand, I don't know what to do with this information anymore because we find out Baby Yoda's actual name thanks to Ahsoka. Which we won't spoil here because again, like I said, that might be something you want to. I mean, granted, we're spoiling it anyway, but hey. Oh, that was perfect. There you go. So yeah. So Ahsoka and the child bond, and the Mandalorian thinking, well, his quest is over, but not yet, of course, because there's another side quest because he didn't complete the mission that he went out there for in the first place. So he after Ahsoka, basically reads the Baby Yoda's mind and finds out the information and finds out, a little bit of backstory on Baby Yoda, which I'm sure they're probably going to return a little bit more to later. We find out.
I was about to say that's the alarm for 20 minutes. So.
Huh?
I said that was the alarm for 20 minutes.
Oh, okay. Go. So, well, yeah, okay. Basically, so and I guess that's why I said 30 minutes in the beginning. But regardless, this is almost finished. Find out the child's name. Michael Bihn's in this episode. We knew, anytime Michael Biehn shows up, something's gonna happen. But Ahsoka and the Mandalorian team up. They go after the magistrate. Ahsoka gets some information having to do because she is looking for one Grand Moff Tarkin. I mean, not Grand Moff Tarkin. I'm sorry. Grand Admiral Thrawn, who apparently, because this is well after the fact that Tarkin's gone. So that was I don't know why that name was in my head, but Grand Admiral Thrawn, whom we last saw in Rebels prior to this, who apparently was this magistrate's master, and I think she is of the same. They said she was of the same race, but she's not Chiss. So, but she's because Chiss are blue. Anyway, regardless, this magistrate whose name is Morgan Ellsworth, I believe that was her name. Yeah. She and Ahsoka fight before she ends up losing and giving up this information, apparently. Or at least that we know. We don't necessarily know whether she got the information or not. And actually, we don't even know whether the person is still alive, but I would like to believe that this person is probably still alive because we didn't see a body drop. And normally in Star Wars, if that's usually the finality of the things. So this person is probably still around, but in custody. But regardless, but yeah, we find out that Thrawn's around. Oh, and of course, earlier in the episode, I forgot to mention that Yoda's name gets dropped because of Baby Yoda. And again, we find out where the Baby Yoda kind of beginnings was. But Ahsoka was kind of reiterates that she can't treat the child, and this is another revelation which had me very, very giddy. To the Mandalorian, she basically says that, look, I can't teach him because he's imprinted on you, and there's a lot of fear in him, and I don't know if he wants to go down that path. So she's basically telling him, you need to go to Tython, which, if you know your Star Wars lore, is a name that hadn't been dropped in a minute, and just the aforementioned Old Republic, especially the MMO. That place, which is basically where the Jedi trained, or one of the old Jedi training planets. Anyway, told him to go there, go put him up on this rock. If he chooses the ball, if he chooses the ball, if he chooses the sword. If you know that reference from Lone Wolf and the Lone Wolf and Cub series. Wait, speak up because did your mic on?
Yeah. I'm here. I've just been very quietly listening to Roddy Cat have fun talking about the Mandalorian.
I love this episode. This episode was so damn good. I loved it.
Plus minutes.
I'm sorry, but this episode was really good.
Cat, just go. That's why I interjected with the timer, because we were joking about how much time we were going to give to this.
Right.
So, like, you covered most of the points. Is there anything else you want to touch on before I just go through a couple of my notes?
Just that, like I said, Tython, she told him, like, if he chooses the way of the Force, then so be it. If he doesn't, then, he'll have to go there, put him on the thing, and Baby Yoda will make the choice of which way he wants to go. Because she was basically early on in the episode, was like, yeah, she can't teach him, and it's best that he just got rid of. I mean, just forgot that he even has the Force. But but Mandalorian was like, well, this was a quest, and that was pretty much. He thought that was the end of it, but that ended up not being the case, and that's it.
This is funny. Roddy Cat actually was wondering if my mic was on or it was working. I literally could have gone away, gotten some more stuff to drink, come back. He still would have been going on about this episode.
No.
But in any event,
well, if you had gone away, yes, but I mean that's a whole I've seen you going away.
Sure. As far as this episode goes, and and in conjunction with the last episode, we did forget to mention one thing that at the end of the Siege episode, chapter 12, episode 4 of season 2, one of the mechanics that perform repairs on the Razor Crest is secretly an Imperial spy.
No, I did. Well, I kind of mentioned. I didn't say that part, but yeah, I mentioned that the
chase is afoot.
Right.
We'll put it. The chase is afoot. Now, with regards to chapter 13, my first notes basically read Ahsoka in big capital letters and with big exclamation points, because that was essentially my reaction to this entire episode from the beginning, as Roddy Cat mentioned. It's fitting that Dave Filoni both wrote and directed this episode, because he co-created, as I mentioned before, the character with George Lucas, and he essentially shepherded the character into fandom's hearts after initial backlash to this little girl Jedi who was, in a sense, very snippy. Ha ha ha. Right? As Roddy Cat mentioned, we did get Michael Biehn, aka Kyle Reese from the Terminator, aka whatever his name was in the Alien movie. So we get him as a hired gun for the main enemy of the episode. He actually goes by the name of Lang in the episode. We get some telepathic communication, basically communicating by the feeling of the thoughts between Ahsoka and the child. We get some idea that, and the timeline seems to work with this, that he's essentially another survivor of Order 66.
Yeah.
Oh, it's something that it's something that fills in more of his story.
And again, I think on that point though, I suspect there's part of that will probably, like I said earlier, there's part of that will probably still kind of bear out.
Definitely going to talk about it, because one thing that Ahsoka mentions in relaying what she's learned to Mando is that the child has seen some dark things, and his memories go very dark once Order 66 goes into effect. In a sense, and this is what I was referring to earlier. In a sense, I understand why Ahsoka says she can't train him, right? Because she's literally referring to her own master.
Yep. And
the history that she has learned, that she has experienced, her experiences, and what she's learned as a result of being the Padawan of one Anakin Skywalker, aka Darth Vader. So I understand that, especially fear and anger being the stumbling blocks to someone of a slightly advanced age. He's 50. Finally learned the ways of the Force and the Jedi, right? I mean, listen, Anakin, when Qui-Gon Jinn picked him up out of slavery and basically emancipated him from Watto on Tatooine, he was already considered too old by the Jedi Council. The the child is 50, so he's he's going to be too old for Jedi training.
And
but,
admittedly, I thought that was going to be the thing. Right. I thought that was going to be the thing right there. She was like, he's too old. I thought she was going to reference that. I'm like, no, it was the other thing. Okay.
Exactly. But, but it's like he's already established the fear and the anger, in his 50 years being alive. And he's already been trained, apparently, by some masters on Coruscant in the Jedi Temple. So, he's already got some training. In my opinion, I feel like some training is better than none. You don't have to be a Jedi. You could be some sort of kind of quasi, Jedi or Force user. So at least he doesn't have, so at least he has some training.
Right. But he's also, and I guess in relative terms, still a baby, even though he's 50 of his species. Because as we know from Yoda, who lived to be like 900,
right.
Almost 900. Them jokers live pretty long.
Right. Radicat mentioned Morgan Elsbeth, the magistrate. I'm glad that she's apparently not dead,
right?
Because she's played by Diana Lee Inosanto, and if that name
I hope she shows
bell
up
for anybody, the Inosanto family name, if that rings a bell for anybody, she is the daughter of Dan Inosanto, who was a student of Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee is actually her godfather.
Right. So I'm glad you brought that up because I did not know that at the time because I went to look. I went to look. I'm like, all right, she's badass. I like her. Who the fuck is she? So I went to look her up. I'm like, oh, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yes, it makes a lot more sense now that the character she plays could at least go a few rounds with Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
So,
so yes, I'm. So hopefully she will show up again.
Right. A couple of more things before I wrap up my thoughts on this. It was very cool to see Ahsoka, Rosario Dawson, use her Shoto lightsaber in the reverse grip.
Yes.
To take Elsbeth, because that's really one of the trademark things that was introduced to a lot of mainstream Star Wars lore. I know part of it, I know some of it was in the video games, but we never really saw that style of swordplay until Ahsoka in the mainstream. So it was nice to see Filoni and the stunt directors really embrace that as part of a highlight of the duel between Ahsoka and Elsbeth. One of my side notes is that I guess you need Star Wars money in your budget to have proper orange skin makeup. This is I'm taking shots at the Titans because they couldn't do that for Corey and Starfire. Shots fired.
Well, it also helps that Rosario Dawson being closer in shade to what Ahsoka would be, naturally than, let's say, which I guess I'll go ahead and bring this up here. I would suspect that that's partially part of the reason why it's Rosario Dawson playing the role and not, Ashley Eckstein, who is the voice and soul of Ahsoka Tano.
Still would have to slap on the orange makeup.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. But it's easier to do. Right, it's easier to do with Rosario Dawson being browner than.
That's funny. But no, in all seriousness, I was just glad to see. I was like, wow, they really made her look good.
Right.
And speaking of Ashley,
not that she already didn't, but yes.
Right. But in terms of the makeup job,
right?
Just in terms of the overall makeup job, I thought that was really well done.
Mm-hmm.
I love Rosario's voice. I feel like she was softening her voice slightly.
Yeah.
To closer match what people expect when they heard Ashley Eckstein speak on Clone Wars and on Rebels. But as soon as she started talking, I still had an echo of Ahsoka's voice, of Ashley Eckstein's voice in my head when I heard her talk.
There seemed to be a little bit of the cadence there, but just a little bit more kind of understated than what we know from how Ashley Eckstein does it. But yeah, it's I like you was kind of there also. I was like, yeah, you can kind of hear shades of it, but it was also different enough to to be like, okay, yeah, it's a little different, but still it's there.
Right. So that's that. Those are my thoughts on it. I was happy to see. There's definitely, we definitely did not go far from the Western motif, that Favreau has instilled in this series. There are definitely a couple of face-offs / duels. There's definitely some samurai motif in there as well, which is what the Western stuff draws upon. So this was very much an entertaining episode, and as Roddy Cat is said earlier, he stressed earlier, this was a really fun episode. I watched it twice.
I'm probably going to watch it again. I didn't watch it twice, but because like I told you beforehand, I watched it earlier today. But yeah, I'm probably going to watch it again also.
Right, because you watched the two back to back.
Right.
So I watched this episode twice. I watched it once. I watched it once over lunch and literally once over dinner. While I was warming up my Thanksgiving leftovers, I watched this again before I came up to start preparing for the show.
Right. So yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, it was a great episode. Hopefully Ahsoka will show up again. I feel like, and maybe this is just me projecting, I feel like her last, there was notes that she could probably be back. That's not saying that she would be, because we were pretty much only promised that she was going to show up. So, but I suspect that she and probably both Bo-Katan are probably going to show up at either, if not this season, maybe next season, but probably at sometime coming up soon. At least I hope so. Anyway, I don't know if you got something else to say before we go move on. Then.
No, that's pretty much it. I'm eagerly anticipating the rest of the season. Not that I wasn't before, but I really am excited to see where they go from here.
Right. Oh, there was also another. I was going to mention this also. There was another Rebels reference in the show that was almost a blink and you missed it. I don't know if you caught it.
What was it?
The Lothcat.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
I was like, because the Lothcat, that was like pretty much a strictly Rebel thing until they started getting it around to other places, and there was just a real quick shot of this Lothcat kind of getting scared away from what the fight. Or getting spooked from what was going on at the time. I was like, oh, shoot. At first, I almost missed it myself. So I was like, wait, is that a Lothcat? It's a goddamn Lothcat. So that was cool that they had that in there. Like, it's a little thing, but that was a thing from Rebels that showed up a lot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously, it showed up a lot because they were on Lothal a lot. So Lothcat this and Lothwolf that and Loth.
But it's also shown up that, like, yeah, exactly, and that was one thing that's kind of was normally restricted to Lothal, but it has shown up in other places on other planets also for various reasons, like this one, because this was not Lothal.
Yep.
So that being said,
we're not 100% sure where this is in the galaxy. It's definitely Outer Rim, but Lothal is supposed to be Outer Rim as well. So
I mean, and there's not necessarily saying that somebody could have just got one from Lothal, or they could have gotten them, and they've been other places. We just know we've seen them on Lothal strictly.
Right. That's when we were introduced to them. So at this point, it's just a nice little Easter egg. I did see that. That was funny.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now we are going to move on to the comic books of the week. We don't necessarily have a transition because we don't normally transition like that. But
I'll just hit one of the comic transitions.
Oh, perfect. That's good. We said we were going to start off with the X of Swords stuff, aka Ten of Swords, which is the last, I guess the last chapters of this said trilogy. I mean, it's not said trilogy of this event, excuse me. And we're going to start off with X-Men 15. If you want to go ahead and take that one.
Sure. X-Men, this is X-Men 15. It is X of Swords chapter 20. We are in the home stretch of the big crossover. Just give me a minute to scroll down to it, and I will tell you who is among the creative team. So, of course, this is written by Jonathan Hickman. The art is by Mahmoud Asrar. Sonny Go is the color artist, and it is lettered by Clayton Cowles, and Tom Muller is responsible for the design. And I mentioned Tom Muller because this episode is chock full of data pages. As well. The last three books definitely have data pages galore to help us to help fill in some of the little gaps that come up as this storyline wraps. So this issue basically revolves around the last duel in the Ten of Swords series between Annihilation, aka Genesis, Apocalypse's maybe not quite ex-wife, maybe estranged is the best way to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Apocalypse himself, while they are in the midst of dueling it out, the Quiet Council is debating on what to do with what Cyclops and Jean Grey have learned when Cable reached out to them in a telepathic distress call last issue or a few issues ago. So the Quiet Council is debating, and it's great. It's really great to see the government and the politics that the X-Men set up on Krakoa really be expressed the way we thought it would be. There's such a big table. There's such a diverse group of characters and mindsets and attitudes represented on this council that we really do get a lot of the different points of view on both Krakoan self-preservation as well as trying to mount a rescue mission.
Right, and I think they touched on a little bit of that in one of the data pages, and that about the differing personalities in there.
Exactly. And what was cool is, and I know that shout out to Classic Materia. What was cool is that Cyclops gets to have a hero moment in this issue, which is really cool. Shout out to Classic Materia, founder of the Colts of the Podcast Network. I'm gonna make sure to shout him out on Twitter. Let him know that we are paying him homage in this episode. As I said, Apocalypse is in the midst of his duel with Genesis / Annihilation. Quick footnote: it's weird. It still kind of bothers me that there's a bunch of repeated names or names that are used in other kind of famous parts of Marvel history and lore that are kind of repeated in Ten of Swords, like the Twilight Sword, and now Annihilation. So it makes you pause and be like, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something else.
Exactly. And before you go any further, let me put this in here real quick. So while the Quiet Council and everybody was chatting about and Cyclops and Jean was telling them their plan, this was without the knowledge of what is going on, or the full knowledge of what's going on in all the world, because they only know from what Cable told them before he got cut off by Assassinine. Right. So he only told them that things were going bad at the time, but they didn't know about the fact that things kind of got evened up.
Yeah, they didn't know about Gorgon basically taking one for the team, taking out a whole bunch of people to even up the score.
Right.
So, as we get down to that duel again between Apocalypse and his estranged wife, Apocalypse finds himself with the upper hand, but doesn't want to deliver the killing blow and objects to Saturnine. That gives Genesis the time to put the helmet on, and apparently that helmet gives her a heck of a lot of power and additional healing, because she is essentially restored after being almost cut in half at the waist.
Right. And here's where I say that pretty much that helmet is just like Dr. Fate's helmet of fate in this situation, because there is another entity that likes to project its will onto the user, and right. This is definitely that's going to come into play at the end of this as it has now.
Right. So that brings us to Excalibur number 15. If you want to start this one.
Sure. So this was a weird little transition, because at the end of like Agent 70 said, that at the end of this we found that Apocalypse was on the upper hand of the fight and pretty much won before things happened. Also, I was just going to say that it's weird and refreshing to see Apocalypse like this, because we have never seen Apocalypse care too much about anything outside of his own agenda. And of course, we know why he's at that agenda, and the fact that he obviously didn't want to kill his wife because he loves her, and it was like, and she's like the stronger of the two, and this and that and the other. So seeing him in the state that he's been in since this fight started, much less before this going into the fight, has been kind of cool but weird as hell. That being said, Excalibur 15, things have escalated like where much like like screw the swords of the it's just a full out battle. So it's Krakoans, you know, and against pretty much everybody else, or pretty much their Arakowans, and they're still kind of outnumbered but holding their own. And then end up getting shorthanded because let's just say the married couple that is Doug and Bay ends up Bay, which is a funny name for that person, but still I'm sure that was intentional. But Bay comes and takes Doug away from the battlefield for whatever reasons that we don't know at the time, while this full-scale battle is pretty much happening, you know, with her people and the Krakoans. And meanwhile, also, you know, they're like, and you know, before this even happened, it was like, yeah, everybody's fighting tooth and nail and doing their thing. And it's, you know, the battle starts turning away when Doug, not that Doug wasn't necessarily a deciding factor, but, you know, it also takes another body away from both sides, which again, the Arakowans, they're still pretty much had a couple other people more than the Krakoans at this point. We see another side of, before things start to shift a little bit, we see Saturnine pretty much making stained glass Betsy, putting the pieces back of Betsy back together again, or at least that we know of. We don't necessarily see that until later, which ends up making someone's theory right on a part. But we basically see the tide of the battle turning, and of course there's that hold the line moment that the Krakoans go through, which is pretty much what Storm and Apocalypse say in Krakoan at that point.
Right. Before you move on, I wanted to point out a few things.
Mm-hmm.
One is that the call to arms from Annihilation at the end of X-Men 15, right, basically causes all pretense of this the sword championship or this contest of champions, basically throws all that aside, and then the Arakowans basically you know, all on their armies and basically, you know, just start out an all-out assault.
Right. But we pretty much go into the battle proper. Like, we don't get any pretense into it. It's just like, as soon as we start this issue up, they're already in full battle.
Exactly. It's already started. So, you know, there's just something that we need to point out, that once it looked like Apocalypse was essentially about to be declared the victor, the Arakowans basically threw aside all pretense of trying to obey any rules and said, screw it, let's just overwhelm them with pure force. And that's where we're headed, and we'll get to that in the next issue. So let's see if there's anything else I wanted to mention before Roddy Cat picks up where he left off.
Yeah, and mind you, this whole thing was being supposedly governed by Saturnine, who, you know, hadn't, you know, once this all broke out, didn't say let anything, just let things happen the way they happen.
Right. I mean, part of me thought about herself playing the game very much like Stephen Strange at the end of an Infinity War. He's like, all right, I got to give this up to make it work. So
right.
He's just,
there's totally some in-game moments happening here.
Right. So essentially, you know, but at least in Infinity War, Saturnine knew that there were a couple things that she had to let play out. Once that little mosaic or jigsaw puzzle she put together came out the way it did, she started to figure out, okay, I think these are some of the things I have to let play, even though some of the things aren't going the way I want them to, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Right. Yeah, because that ends up coming up with a conversation in the next book. But yeah, so like I said, the battle gets the tide of the battle turns, but of course, what ends up happening when the backs are against the wall and the chips are on the line, the cavalry, or at least part one of the cavalry, ends up coming into play in the form of Jubilee and the priestesses of the Starlight Citadel who came in and given us this. But obviously, since Jubilee is there for her friends and for Shoko, who is still in the Starlight Citadel, um, kind of comes in, and the priestesses are there to defend the Citadel. So, after they kind of come in and do their part real quick, they kind of split off, and Jubilee's with the rest of the Krakoans, and the priestesses kind of clear a path to the Citadel. But then this is when, before going into the next book, we get, I believe that's in this book actually, we start seeing now that's in the next book, but we start to see where the cavalry comes, before the cavalry comes into the next, comes to the rescue in the next book, because we start to see shades of Cyclops's and Jean's plan, or at least little bits of it anyway.
Also, you need to mention, we should mention that some of the Arakowans don't want to partake in this.
That's correct. And yes.
Some of the sword bearers decide to go off and do their own thing and do not wish to be part of this battle. They thought they were in for a contest of champions. So,
right. It basically stopped being right. Honorable enough for them. So some of them left. So yeah, it kind of did even up the field a little bit more.
Right. So they beg off from the fight, but as Roddy Cat theorized, and it became more and more obvious as the series went along, one of the intended byproducts of this crossover event was to restore a mainstay of the X-Men corner of the Marvel Universe, and of the Excalibur title.
Mm-hmm. Which we will get to that in a second. And actually, that's probably... Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was about to say I was leading into what you were going to say, because that's where this issue ends.
Right. And actually, shout out to the Von Gloom for that one, because he also definitely, I think that was probably more of his part of the theory than mine was. But yes, I was kind of with him with that, so I can't really take full credit for that one, because we were kind of both in a similar place on where part of this thing was going to go. It didn't happen. It didn't happen in the way we thought, though, or fully in the way we thought.
To say nothing, according to like the few notes I had a chance to jot down, nothing goes the way we thought it would.
Right.
Similar to an issue, another comic this week, Daredevil number 24. But getting back to this, it was always in the back of my mind, because of the fact that the head writer the writer responsible for the Excalibur title was collaborating with Hickman on doing the story, that Howard. So I always suspected that, and especially with the news that Betsy Braddock was taking over the title, that the actual, and I'll mention it now, the Captain Britain Corps might be resurrected at some point.
Right. Which was pretty much part of the theory.
Exactly, and that was part of the theory, and that's what essentially I was getting at when I said this was one of the byproducts that were intended, much like increased toy sales after Marvel Superhero Secret Wars.
Right.
So we have to get to a point where we bring back Captain Britain Corps. That's the story.
Yes, the part that's near and dear to Agent 70, of course.
Of course. We need to do this, so let's do this.
So so at the end of this issue, we find out that Saturnine was indeed putting the pieces back together of Betsy. Again, much to her dismay, because once she finishes up, as Agent 7 said, things didn't necessarily go the way she thought it was going to when she pieced things back together. We see that...
Hey, hold on just for a second, because I can actually squish this into the same recap, because the creative teams for these two issues are very similar. For Excalibur, the art team is very similar to the X-Men book. So this is written by Tini Howard, with art by Mahmoud Asrar and Stefano Caselli, and colors by Sonny Go and Rochelle Rosenberg, and letters by VC's Clayton Cowell. So there's very much a connection between X-Men 15 and Excalibur number 15. And for the big capper issue 10 of Swords Destruction #1. This is written by Jonathan Hickman and the aforementioned Tini Howard, with art by Pepe Larraz and color art by Marte Gracia and lettering by VC's Clayton Cowles. So, and of course the data pages by Tom Muller, because it's, you know, we couldn't survive this whole event without getting those data pages.
Right.
But Pepe Larraz delivers an incredible issue here. Please continue.
So yeah, at the end of Excalibur 15, like I said, this is when the assist from Jubilee and the priestess come out. Doug and Bay comes back, but all the Krakoans are still surrounded by, you know, Genesis, Apocalypse, and folks, and that's when we get the thing that Saturnin puts the pieces of Betsy back together, and she's like, "Oh, this is not what I had in mind," and we see. And she's kind of upset about that, but this is where we start to find out that the Captain Britain Corps are indeed coming back into play, which leads us into 10 of Swords Destruction #1, where we definitely find out that that's the case. But actually, I'm going to scroll back into this real quick and see where it started, because there's parts of it that, weirdly enough, I'm forgetting about. So yeah, the Cap Britain Corps is back into play. Everybody's back, or all of them back, and there's a bunch of versions of Betsy. However, Prime Betsy is not back. We see other multiversal versions of her and other Captain Britain Corps, but we do not see her.
Right. It's not explained even until later on.
Right.
I assumed as a reader that she was back, but because they don't actually mention that in the story, they touch upon it later on. Right.
So, and yeah, we definitely find out, like, so during the course of this last issue, that there are definitely loose ends that are probably going to come up later in X series, probably more likely including this, because I would hate for, you know, Betsy to be off the table for that long. Regardless, so Cap Britain Corps is back. The fight starts back over again. There's some renewed energy on the battlefield, and looks like there are definitely losses on both sides, and even with the Captain Britain Corps. Annihilation pretty much. I guess you could almost put this in a Lords of the Rings, but I can't remember what battle it was. But basically, more monsters get called out for the Orokin side while everybody's fighting, and then another the cavalry assist comes in in the form of Cyclops, Jean, and a whole mess of Krakoans. In a grand fashion, because Cyclops basically telepathically, links up with Cable, and then Yana Rasputin, aka Magic, who's basically just like, kick in the door, wave in the 4-4.
And honestly, I'm going to ring. I'm definitely going to hit a particular sound effect here, because it did strike me as a little corny, and it was definitely funny.
Yeah.
But we found out who the 10th sword was.
Yes, or more in this case, what the 10th sword was in the case.
Right, and what it is the peak, which is the vessel for sword. Mm-hmm. Okay. You know, I was like, okay, fine, you got me.
Right. Yeah, because we was wondering, because we had been wondering a few different times, like, wait, they only had 9 swords, and you know, but apparently those 9 swords was able to get them to the point and get in there. So I was like, and we knew the peak was around because we seen, you know, we had been reading Cable, even going up into getting into this event, going up to and getting into this event, but we weren't really sure what the peak had to do with anything. Actually, kind of much like the Captain Britain Corps, but we knew at least the Captain Britain Corps had more of a tie to, you know, where things was than the peak, you know. So anyway, Magic opens up a big ass portal. The peak comes out and just rests right on top of the Starlight Citadel, and you can almost see it go ting as the 2 points meet. And then a whole mess, pretty much looks like almost everybody. as I say in my notes, like it's a party and pretty much everybody came, including Dupe.
Yes,
Because because you can see like it started raining down mutants, Krakoans.
even Gwenpool showed up. So
Even who?
Gwenpool.
Wait, okay, and was that one the one I didn't see? Oh yeah, you're right, I do see her. Yeah, I'm looking at the page now.
There.
And yeah, because we had seen her like show up in Marauders one issue. I'm like, what is she doing there? She's not even a mutant. You know, so that's weird. Unless she is now, and we don't, you know, it's something we don't know because you know. But as far as we know, she's not a mutant. But yeah, just it starts raining down mutants, and you know the battle just continues to go, and you see a bunch of really nice pages of the or at least you know, the couple after that, or at least the one after that where you see you know various people, you know various groups of people in battle, almost in a cinematic fashion. You know, it's a pretty damn good fight, and of course, and then it falls back to Apocalypse and Annihilation, who apparently Apocalypse got his sword fixed because it was broken in Excalibur 15. So that feels like a continuity error. I don't know, or maybe it's
that just the shard, and he's just depicting it differently because it's not the full kind of sickle.
Maybe. But it looks like it's full though, because it felt like it was cut off a little closer to the where it juts off at. But maybe I'm like you're probably right, and just leave it at that. But
you know, it might just be artistic interpretation because if I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to be like this gigantic kind of sickle shape.
Right.
So it definitely doesn't look like that. But as Roddy Cat was mentioning, we get back to essentially what is the last battle, which continues despite the fact that Apocalypse really did, you know, win that last duel, but she never yielded. She never, you know, much like T'Challa against whatchamacallit, against Killmonger, he never yielded. He did not die. So they continue to battle, and the Annihilation mask is still on. And what she uses, you know, with the mask is to bring in even more extra dimensional beasts. Just
pretty much.
let Nebula Raz, you know, go to town, summoning all of Darker Amenth, all of these wacky places that Tini Howard and Jonathan Hickman came up with during this event. And so we get lots more supernatural stuff, kind of Cthulhu stuff, some kaiju stuff. You know, it's pretty wild. And at the end of the day, we get a flashback to something that came up when the X-Men decided to visit the peak and see what was going on up there. That was a weird little callback. I was like, oh snap, they came back to this.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because we were wondering, even at the time we saw this, like we were wondering, like, what in the world is this all about? And when is this? We knew it was going to come back into play at some point, but we didn't know where or how. We figured it was something like maybe down the line. But apparently, no, here we go. So yeah, being that the peak is back into play, and Cable and Saturnine was talking, and we found out that yeah, he got the full call for a reason, but now he just figured it out because he has the sword of Galador, and they go back. He has Iana and Cyclops Jean take him back to the peak, where he goes back to power up the peak again, which opens up the door, a greenish door, some would say, but not having to do with anything to do with Immortal Hulk. But opens up a door and lets out the whole bunch of beings that they had trapped in there from Cable's when, you know, I guess it was Cable. It was either Cable or X-Men. I can't remember when that particular thing happened. But when Cyclops Jean and Cable went to the peak, they were they had turned on the power. They came across these beings who were feeding off folks. But then they turned off the power. Now they turned it back on, and these people came through the gate. Yana opened up another gate to the battlefield, and that pretty much turned the tide of the battle because they came in almost like an annihilation wave and just cleaned off the battlefield of a lot of Arakowans.
Right, like it definitely seemed like, you know, it seemed like the cavalry consisted of, you know, or at least the way they were acting and the way they're depicted, at least in this issue, is that they're kind of like a mix between, like you said, like it's almost like an annihilation wave. It felt like a wave of mindless ones from the Dormammu's Dark Dimension, just kind of like these like unstoppable, just machine-like creatures, but they prove to actually be not invulnerable because Annihilation and Annihilation / Genesis, slashes a bunch of them to pieces, but they are yet another force on the battlefield.
Right. Yeah, like I said, they come in, kind of cleaned up the battlefield of a lot of Arokans and maybe some other people too. We don't know. They were just there, just feeding off of Jokers. But yeah, we get back to the fight with Annihilation and Apocalypse, who basically takes the helmet off of Genesis, and in a stroke no one saw coming, puts it on himself.
Yeah.
Well, let me phrase that. No one except for Saturnine, because she seemed like she saw this part coming.
Yeah, she was basically saying, "Go on, wait for it." Right. She's not Aaron Burr. She's much more like Doctor Strange, knowing what's going to happen.
Right. And we'll get to more of her in a minute, because there was an extent to what she knew, not obviously going into part of this. So yeah, so to end this all off, and I'm actually real quick, I'm kind of wondering who that person was that Iska was holding on to, because I think that's Pyro. I'm not sure, but she looks like she kind of pretty much took him out. But regardless, this ended up with Apocalypse basically trying to not get taken over by the mask, which he kind of sort of does, and he surrenders, which Saturnine's like, as the Agent 7 said, like, go on, do your thing, which much to the dismay of the entity in the helmet, pretty much calls things to a close. Saturnine comes down and with Shogo and wipes the field of a lot of other folks. Takes the mask off, just easily takes the mask off of Apocalypse and turns it into a staff and gives it to Genesis. But then she basically was like, all right, well, now that that's all done with, we need a prisoner exchange. Apocalypse goes with the Arokans and his wife, obviously. Wow. So this was the weird part about this part. So, because there's supposed to be a prisoner exchange or quote unquote a prisoner exchange, not necessarily a prisoner exchange, but some sort of exchange between both parties. I was thinking, well, since Bay was already married to Doug, that was going to be the case for the Arakowans. As it turns out, Apocalypse is like, no, it's basically the whole island of Arako. In exchange that goes with the Arakowans.
Real quick, pause just for a hot second. You mentioned Shogo basically cleaning up the battlefield.
Pretty much. Well, let me phrase it. I mean, there's a lot of people still there, but because he did kind of come out and swoop up some folks.
It seemed like that was like the one thing, and I think that they mentioned this, that Dragonfire, at least in this realm, was like stupendously powerful, much like it. Just like it almost always is in fantasy stories.
Right.
But, Saturnine having exerted this extreme influential control over Shogo, uses his Dragonfire to basically lay waste to any of the armies that she did not want to have on the battlefield anymore.
Right, which was that last army that came from the peak.
Right, so essentially we get, she basically drives them back, and we get to what Roddycat was referring to as the terms of the armistice, essentially.
Right. So we get that, and Apocalypse, looking, I guess, kind of happy, goes off with his family, with the Arokans. The Arakowans coming to go back home. And then we get a couple more data pages having to do with the swords and where things, and like I said earlier, during this we kind of get like some loose ends that's going to come up later, but a lot of that bears out in these data pages, because we find out where the swords of both Arakko and Krakoa are and who has them, or at least where they are, not necessarily in all cases of who has them. Obviously, Bay went with the Krakoans with Doug. We get a data page on the Captain Britain Corps, And this is where we find out that Betsy's still missing. And she pretty much was the catalyst of this. And then the rest of this is basically finding out. The rest of the issue is basically finding out that Saturnine did not know everything that was going on, but she knew that there was some randomness some random that she kind of, like Agent 70 said earlier, that she was going to have to deal with and let play out. But she didn't let on to the person she was talking to that, some of that she didn't know about, which obviously she's not going to do that, being the person that she is. And then it's kind of like one of those, this is where everybody is, at the end of the movie type situations after this, because we see Shogo and Jubilee back together. The Peak is back out in space. Although, half out in space, because it looks like it's basically, the Peak is a wedge in between other worlds, because it's still, according to that page, it's still right above the Starlight Citadel, but also out in space in front of or around Earth. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but we do know they're going to be doing something with that later on. We see Storm taking the sword back to Wakanda. We see the Quiet Council, and obviously, and that was another thing we kind of mentioned earlier, but we didn't really go through to it. There's been a change in the Quiet Council because of X-Men 15, because Sebastian Shaw was like, look, whoever leaves from the Quiet Council is not on the council anymore. So being that Jean was on the council and a couple of people wanted to go, which was actually kind of funny, because Kate wanted to go and she got foiled by Scott's lie, and that was kind of funny. But now I guess Jean's not on the council anymore. So, and there's basically some changes that's going to be afoot in Krakoa, I guess.
I thought they fixed that she could go through the portals again once they fixed her resurrection.
Well, see, that's just it. But she didn't, I think, because I think that was the implication. Because when Scott was like, yeah, but we're going through a gate, and she's like, oh, shoot, or so I don't know if she's leery about it, though, or that hasn't borne out yet. So we don't necessarily know. Supposedly, yes, that did get fixed because of her resurrection. But apparently she didn't think about that, when this came up, because otherwise she would have said, well, wait, that should have been taken care of.
Even I was taken aback by that just a bit. I was just like, why couldn't she go through the portal?
Right. Right. I was just like, that was funny, but I was like, wait, exactly. And I was thinking that same thing.
But I let that one go because they want to keep her on the council. So
right. And Nightcrawler was kind of a similar situation, because Jean was like, no, you need to stay because you're the soul of the group, and this and that and the other, which I was like, because even Nightcrawler was like, yeah, I'm kind of ashamed, like, why no one invited me? This is about swords, and nobody invited me, and that's the thing.
One was thinking. I was like, wait a second, he's like one of the only dudes that actually walks around normally with a sword.
Exactly, and loves that shit.
To a sword tournament, so
right. And he would have cleaned house. Or at least he would have, done some damage.
Should have been one of the combatants, but obviously it wasn't actually played out like a sword tournament. So
exactly.
That takes us to the end of the 10 of Swords, X of Swords event.
Yeah, pretty much like I said. We find out that being that the Captain Britain Corps is back, and various parts of other world have been taken, either been taken over by other people and whatnot. But since the Captain Britain Corps is back, the Titan 9 can use them to kind of basically, as her army, in other places. And she's alone because she just still didn't get Brian. So, and like I said, that pretty much ends out this note. But apparently, like I said, I feel like that there's going to be the loose ends that come out of this are going to come back into play. Probably even including that, at some point.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah. That's it. All 22 chapters. It's a wrap for 10 of Swords.
Mm-hmm. So, as I said earlier, it definitely felt the closer we get to the end that, one of the main things they wanted to get out of this Marvel editorial, and Hickman and Howard really wanted to get out of this, was the reestablishment of the Captain Britain core, and that particular dynamic between Saturnine and the rest of the realities. So, and Otherworld being a player. So, and reestablishing Avalon in that corner of the Excalibur part of the Marvel universe. So they definitely established that. They took an entire 22 issue series to do it.
Right. Right. Which is weird because you would that seems like something that shouldn't have anything to do with some of this other stuff that's going on. But yeah, that was pretty much a relatively major part of this. And I guess it should be worth reiterating before we move on that, yeah. So Saturnine was thinking that once she put the pieces back together, I'm thinking her plan was, this was either her way to get Brian back as Captain Britain, because as folks know, well, folks may or may not know, most of the Captain Britain Corps multiversally are either versions of him or something like. But now that Betsy has the mantle, and once she finished the picture, she realized that was a catalyst for all of the Captain Britain Corps pretty much being other multiverse versions of her instead of Brian, which of course, didn't sit too well with Saturnine, because she hates Betsy one, and she wants Brian for other reasons than to just be her champion.
Right. I mean, I understand. I definitely understand the editorial edict and what they want out of this story. And now better than when the story was first solicited and when it started, because I freely admit not being very attuned to or being very familiar with the Excalibur corner of the Marvel Universe. So if they were going to reestablish it and introduce it to the widest possible audience, then this is the way to do it.
Right.
So,
and it's questionable to what end. Sorry.
No, but I understand that in the sense of marketing, in the sense of exposure, and in the sense of getting something like this to establish a less well-known part of the X universe. So right. I better understand that now, because for a lot of people, I don't know if you had this same experience, but definitely anecdotally, I had a lot of people ask me about Ten of Swords and whether or not I was going to stay on for it.
Right.
I think I know where they're going, and I suspected this at least to be the case. And obviously, we knew that they were going to have they were going to lead with a very strong emphasis on the Excalibur elements of the story. The traditional Excalibur elements of the story that I'm not that familiar with, but I was willing to let that go. And that's what I relayed to people that asked me. I said, it would help if, it would help that myself and them as readers of this new story, if we were at least a little familiar with the Excalibur corner of the universe. But I don't think it's earth shattering that we don't know much, because they're just going to explain it to us. But now we know more about why they decided to do a 22-page a 22 issue serialized story about setting this up.
Well, see, that's where I come from the other side of this, because I do have some familiarity with it. Having read Excalibur originally back in the day to a certain extent, but it's still not a whole lot, because obviously Captain Britain kind of was his own thing, and there's been Captain Britain books and been associated with other folks on that, but it has been less of a player in, I guess, modern times, recent times, and even so much that when they killed them off. But yeah, I wouldn't. So me going into this was thinking, well, like, okay, this is a weird side note, not necessarily the main crux of it, and this other whole thing with Arakko and Krakoa being the main thing, and that the Captain Britain side was just kind of like a little side chunk that just so happens to spin off on this. But yeah, it seems to be that was more of a focus than originally I gave it more credit to, for one thing. And again, I still go back to say real quick that, like, to what end, though? Because you don't go and do an event like this and make this a focal point for no reason. Like, it doesn't matter, marketing aside or anything, you don't just reestablish this thing if you're not going to get some use out of it some kind of way. And I'm kind of curious as to what reason and to why. Because that's just a real big thing to kind of like, yeah, here's this old thing. We brought them back into play and not do anything with them.
Well, I think they're at the very least trying to put more focus on the Excalibur corner of the universe. You know, and I suspect that is, you know, one of their primary goals. But I'm willing to see where they're going with this. You know, much the same way. You know, I think that's what you're getting at, which is that can't be the only reason. That can't be the main reason.
That definitely can't be the main reason. Yeah.
I want to say it's one of the main reasons. It may not be the number one reason. So
I don't know. Like I said, there has to be something bigger in the thing for this, and it may not be. I could be wrong about that, but like that's a weird thing to have to hinge, let's say, half to a good 3/4 of an event, especially in the X Party universe on, you know, this early on also.
I was about to say, I think other than them bringing Arakko into play, you know, like land-wise,
right?
You know, to kind of bring the two together. I honestly think that was probably Hickman's side of the deal. I think Tini Howard's side of the deal was to give her a lot more of the old Excalibur toys to play with. So
perhaps
that I think is the some of the main takeaways from this, and obviously that Saturnine is going to continue to be a pain in the neck for the X folks. So we'll see how this all plays out in the aftermath. I think there's a couple of kind of like official, quote unquote, official aftermath books in the X books for Ten of Swords now that it's over. So we'll see how this all plays out, because some relationships have changed. Some of them have been altered, irrevocably, and some of them have been born, and some have been born anew. You know, all of a sudden we've got a character that's running around with Doug, Cypher. Who knows what Krakoa is going to say about that? So, you know, we shall see.
And it wasn't even the person that I thought it should have been, or could have been, and should have been. But that's a whole nother thing, you know, on the side of that. So more on that, and we're now going into the Reign of X part of the X universe. Coming into coming months, especially at the end of and we got news on that later on in the book. So let's get on to a couple more books before we can kind of push this along a little bit more. I guess let's go ahead and do the other event type thing real quick, if you want to, in Amazing Spider-Man 53 LR.
Sure, go ahead.
So we basically find the Order of the X. I'm sorry, I'm still mixing this up.
Still in Ten of Swords.
Yeah, I know, right? Let me clear that off. So, Sin Eater versus Moreland pretty much goes the way that, well, one, you expected it to, but shouldn't have happened, because Sin Eater pretty much sets out dinner for Moreland, who takes the bait. They have a little scuffle, but apparently Sin Eater comes out on top of that for some reason, for whatever reason. And now Moreland's back in the picture for some reason. But then it cuts to Doctor Strange and the Order of the Web, as I was trying to say, that are in Spidey's astral place looking for him, and they run into a little business with some with some Spidey foes, which actually, so we knew one of them was the Kingpin, and they said that expressly. Who was the other one? Was that the Rose? Do you know?
It seemed like a combination of a couple things, because it looked like a doppelganger with the extra arms, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah, so I couldn't figure out who that was, but regardless, they're there in the fighting, demonic versions of Spidey villains. Doctor Strange splits up the party for some stupid reason. You never do that. Come on, folks. You know D&D.
He's Gandalf taking on the Balrog, right? So he's sending off everyone else to hang out with Spidey.
We'll get to that part, but I meant before that. But they split the party off and says, like, hey, we're split up and go look for Peter, see if there's any traces of him, which they don't find him, but they find pretty much where he led to. But yeah, at the end of it, like that person that was in the shadow that looked like MJ was a demonic version of MJ, which, as Agent 70 said, was pretty much the Balrog in this case. Doctor Strange stays behind and fights that, while the rest of the Order go to the wherever the portal back to Earth is, and they get led. They seem to fall into a trap because Sin Eater's pretty much right outside, waiting for them, presumably with Morlun, but we don't know that part, and that's where this issue ends.
Right. I just wanted to mention that creatively, it's Nick Spencer and Matthew Rosenberg on the script. Art-wise, it is Federico Vicentini and Takeshi Miyazawa on the art,
Yes.
with inks by those two and Scott Hanna and Marcio Menez and Eric Arciniega on colors. So it's actually, I definitely still don't like the idea that these LR issues exist.
Yeah.
You know, this definitely feels like something that could be in the regular numbering, but I don't want to beat a dead horse with that one.
Yeah.
I'm still very much confused as to why Morlun is brought into the story at all. It seemed to make little sense that Sin Eater would go this way. Although I definitely like the fact that Sin Eater's narration squares, they used to be bubbles back in the day, but narration, bits of narration are all in purple and green, like his uniform color. So his color. So I really like that because it clues you in at the end of the book that he is back in charge of the narration.
Right. Now we also know that this last remains is the let's say the dark middle chapter of this long con that Nick Spencer is this long trip that Nick Spencer is bringing us on. So yeah, Morlun's, and it's supposed to get like deeper and darker for Spidey going into whatever the last part of this is. So yeah, whatever Morlun's part in this, Morlun is, let's say, probably one of the biggest threats of Spidey's career. Like, we can safely say that. So, falling on lesser times now, but at the same time, still a big enough threat. If not for him, then definitely for the Order, however that plays out. So, yeah, we'll see how that plays out in whatever way that plays out. In going into the last, because there's only 3 more issues. Yeah, there's 3 more issues in this last part.
Just to mention that according to the reading list, the Last Remains checklist, there are only 3 issues left in the month of December for this little mini event. So we will see how this all plays out over the course of 2 regular Spidey issues and 1 LR issue.
Right, but then it's going to go into the last chapter of whatever Spencer's planning from what he said early on. So this is just like the middle chapter that's ending. So still buckle up for whatever the rest is going to be. Anyway, that's pretty much Amazing Spider-Man 53 LR. Do you have a book you want to throw
out? Did you read Dr. Doom number 9?
I sure did.
Oh my gosh, I have not read this series consistently at all. I decided to read this book after I woke up from my ill-timed nap, right? So fell asleep earlier tonight, and I'd gotten through Daredevil, and for whatever reason, I nodded off. But I read this Dr. Doom issue on a lark. I have not read this series consistently. I know I remember what the premise of the first several issues of this book was.
Right, because I talked about it.
Dr. Doom was basically framed for something, for a crime he didn't commit against humanity. But this book is written by Christopher Cantwell with art by Salvador LaRocca and colors by Guru FX. So you would think that I would be on top of this because Sal LaRocca's on it, but we read a lot of books, folks. But I am very glad I read this issue this week because it's so wild, so wacky, yet also so great a description of the greatness and the weakness is of one Victor Von Doom.
Yeah. And I would say before you go along with that, like this, to this book's credit, it's been doing that since it started. Like, I've been on top of this book since it started, and I was like, yeah, you can, like, you see another side of Victor Von Doom, a little, not necessarily for vulnerability. Well, you've seen him, if you've read previous issues, you've seen him in a vulnerable state, but nevertheless, like, you see a whole different side that you really don't ever get to see in Victor during the How This Goes. And yeah, that even outside of the whatever he was doing in Infamous Iron Man. Like this just kind of takes that and just kind of goes like a little bit deeper in a sense. But yeah, oh god. But anyway, go ahead and what you're gonna say with this.
Well, I mean, since you've been keeping up with this, I just wanted to just touch upon a couple of things I noticed before I get into the story points.
Mm-hmm.
But, Doom is essentially trying to save the world on his own terms. And, he thinks he's got it right. And to be honest, he probably does have it right. Mm-hmm. And Reed Richards even admits that he's got it right. And Cap is actually... confiding in Reed, like, hey, you think this is gonna work? And Reed is like, yeah, this will work. Mm-hmm. But of course, Doom and his loyal Doom bots, programmed with his own, personality, with his own brainwave sometimes, they're basically performing the task so that they can build the right level, the right amount of, or the right types of technology so that they can collapse a black hole that is plaguing the Earth and whatnot. So
that's near the moon, by the way.
What's that?
That's near the moon, by the way.
Right. Well, I mean, what I was going to say is this is what's plaguing them. This is what I wasn't familiar with because I haven't been keeping up with the story. But Vic is, set this plan into place. He's also worked on setting, he's also come up with contingencies of what to do once he's successful.
Yeah.
Which I found hysterically funny, but well thought out.
But also very Doom-like.
Oh, of course, because, he's thinking, well, I want to be the hero so I can rule the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But before I do that, I think I might have to turn myself in for a little while to pay penance for my crimes.
Well, see, so part of that has to do with earlier parts of the book where he basically sees visions of future version of himself where he does. He has a different life, and that's kind of what starts off some catalyst of this. But also, I believe there is another. Comes to find out that there is another version of him. I believe it was another version of him that does end up taking over, ruling the Earth.
Right. with his faithful sidekick Pinky. So as Vic is, and of course I'll call him Vic because that's what Ben Grimm calls him, right? So as Vic goes through with his plan and successfully starts the task, Reed Richards decides to place "Good luck, be careful. I think you're gonna do well this time" call. And that just totally screws with Vic's mind. And you see it play out over several pages and several panels. And you have to credit both Cantwell's storytelling in the sense of the script and Sal LaRocca's art in and in the visual storytelling that's contained on these pages.
Right.
You can't help but start just laughing. I'm laughing at this. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me with this. I may have to go back and buy these books later on or pick up a trade paperback because this issue was so good. And I literally found myself reading this like, oh my God. Oh my God, this is so nuts.
And the beautiful part about this, because this goes back to like that whole thing with him second guessing himself goes back to the beginning of him and Reed's relationship, where a similar thing happened that caused him to become Dr. Doom. Because
where Doom learned, you know what? Once in a while, it helps to have someone double check your numbers.
Right, but like Doom had a plan back then. I was like, no, he's all fine and good. And then Reed comes on and was like, like Agent Seven said, it was like, yeah, check the numbers and this and that and other. But in that case, there was a little bit more doubt than, as far as we know, that was in this one. But regardless, a similar thing plays out to where
well, he hadn't built somebody else to check his numbers. In this case, he did. So
and it's the same person. But yeah. I see what you're saying. Yes. That's absolutely right. The Doom bots. But in that earlier case, but it still plays out in a similar manner because of the fact that Doom thinking like, yeah, I got this. My numbers check out, and my everything is sound. I got this. And then Reed Richards, who is just as smart as he is, but as all an intellectual rival, kind of comes on like, hey, this and that. But in the original case, which causes, some would say could have caused Doom to second guess himself, and then the accident happens, and then everything happens, and of course Dr. Doom blames Reed then, which is a long-standing thing with them, even going up to now. So coming into this case, Reed just basically comes and says, hey, good luck with your thing. But then it starts playing out like who's on first, because they have this back and forth, like Agent 70 says. And they're like, well, you said this and this, that. No, I'm like, no, but you said you believe that that's not the same thing as no, and da 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 da. And that whole thing playing out into this, which causes Doom to second guess himself again, which makes him start
arguing with himself 10 or 20 fold.
Right.
It's literally 20 Dooms arguing amongst themselves and reinforcing the little seed of doubt that pops up.
Exactly, which causes him to actually change his original plan, and then causes something else to happen, and then he goes back and blames Reed again at the end of this because of him second guessing himself, I guess by way of Reed, by way of Reed. It this was a beautiful issue for all of that, because like I said, it just pretty much goes back to the whole thing within him in the beginning, and now there's a new problem that sort of I don't know if it's a new problem, but basically I'm kind of curious if it's something that's gonna stick in the long run, because at the end of this, with Doom's plan trying to get rid of the black hole, he causes another issue with the moon. I guess technically he did get rid of the black hole, but it was not necessarily as safely as I guess some would say the moon might be disfigured just like Doom is.
Oh no. I was about to say, watch it be the blue area, and all of a sudden, he's gonna get the Watcher coming after him.
Oh, not only that, but yeah, exactly. And the Summers, the Summers clan is up there somewhere. So I wonder if it's that part of like, what the fuck, you blew up our house.
That's funny, man. That's so funny. Yeah, I was honestly very much surprised by how much I enjoyed this book. This is a potential click of the week for me. And literally my note this week is potential click of the week, LOL at Doom. Because just reading this, I'm like, oh my God, look at this play out. So it was pretty funny. You got a book you want to throw out? Eat that sounds actually. I was like, you got a book you want to talk about?
There's probably a couple of them, but I mean, I can short stroke a whole lot of these. I was
about to say, if you want to go into rapid fire, that's fine
too. Let's do Maestro.
Okay.
Maestro number 4, and then we'll rapid fire. So this is issue 4 of 5.
Yeah. This book is written by Peter David, as we know, touching back upon the Hulk featuring Perfect Stuff, with art by Herman Peralta and colors by Jesus R. Bertov, that is. Colors by him. So.
Yeah.
Somebody else from VC apparently does letters. Ariana Maher is doing letters. Gotta love it. But anyway, go on.
So it's basically Hulk versus Hercules Part 2. And I'm kind of, before I go into it real quick, but I'm kind of upset with myself because I actually genuinely wanted to go back and read Future Imperfect, especially after reading this issue, because at the end of this issue, we start to see where things start to come together. But regardless, the short strokes is that it's Hercules versus Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, Part 2. And the let's just say the Hulk gets a little bit of his, as I say in my notes, he gets a little bit of his own MCU medicine in the way he gets dealt with.
That was a great sequence.
Yeah, I love that. I was like, all right, that was bravo. But then the Hulk, aka Bruce Banner, is like, all right, bet. You know what? You won, but I'll be back. Like, yeah, I'll be back, seemingly under the guise of like, you know what? Because Hercules was like, all right, you learned your lesson, come on in, have a drink and some women or whatever the case may be. And Bruce is like, you know what? No, I'm gonna go. I haven't earned it yet, but I'll be back. And then we cut to Rick Jones, who was like, yeah. So, and also in the thing that touches on a little bit of Immortal Hulk, slightly in a sense, who was like, yeah. So, Banner is just one of one of the Hulk's personalities. Again, getting a nod to Immortal Hulk, but the person that was here earlier was pretty much his dad, and his dad is like, look, he's gonna come back and do whatever it takes for him to win. Like that was the Bruce that we saw earlier, and sure enough, because and then he was even like that, it's not gonna end well, which we already know, historically it's not. He comes back and with a young lady with him, I guess, as I don't know, don't want to say as an offering to Hercules, but as a companion, let's just say, who goes off with Hercules while Hulk is like, yeah, I got to go out to my car real quick. I forgot something. So he goes off. Hercules and this lady who, at first I did not know who this was until when I saw the name and looked it up, because I didn't know this person's actual name.
Mm-hmm.
Come to find out that this is Vapor from the UFOs, which is one of the Hulk's old enemies. I don't know how and why she's still around, but I guess because she's gamma infused, I guess that makes some sense.
And also the nature of her powers.
Right. Exactly. So, and we still haven't seen these, which actually we said before, we hadn't seen the UFOs in Immortal Hulk proper. But I'm kind of wondering if some of that is going to play out there, or is going to come back to there before the series ends. Either way, that's neither here nor there. Hercules and Vapor getting introduced to each other. She pretty much takes out Hercules. Hulk takes out her, and basically like, yeah, get rid of Hercules. And I guess this is where he starts to assume control at the end of this issue. So he pretty much came back and was like, yeah, I'm going out to the car, get my other gun, and then I'm coming back. And sure enough, comes back much later, and we don't know what the length of time was, because we know it's been some time, and pretty much has Hercules taken out. And he even goes over and says, like, yeah, the Hulk always wins. In this case, it's not normally, because even during the whole course of the fight, Hercules is like, look, you're not the Hulk. I mean, you're not the Hulk, because the Hulk would have still been fighting and still gotten madder and gotten fighter. Like, this is Banner, who knows what his weight is. Who knows his limitations or lack thereof, but not really using them to how they are, because there's a mind behind it. And that's what leads him to kind of go off and be like, and come back with a Banner-esque type evil genius plan to get rid of Hercules.
Right. So there's one issue left in this. You covered most of the points I would have hit. Just one thing. There's one more issue left in this particular miniseries, and then we literally roll right into another one in January. So if there's a time to kind of read it's just 2 issues. They are oversized, right. But you could probably knock that out over the next month before the next miniseries hits. My understanding is that the next miniseries touches upon more of Peter David's Hulk run from the 90s. Includes more characters from that. Mm-hmm. So I need to go back, because I kind of jumped off reading the Hulk when these characters kind of became more prominent. This is like during the Gary Frank era. It's like after Dale Keown jumped off to go to Image. Gary Frank was the primary artist on the Hulk, and I was kind of on and off the Hulk at that time. And there's specifically a group of characters that were playing a very prominent role in the Hulk book at that time, that I believe play a role in the next Maestro limited series. So I may have to go back to Marvel Unlimited myself and do some research. But yeah, I think while this series is ending and before the next one starts, I think is a great time to just kind of pick up those 2 issues and just read them, because they are a lot of fun. Yeah. It's kind of dark. Don't get me wrong, it's dark, but it's still a very good read.
Cool. That being said, if there's nothing else, yeah, rapid fire this.
All right, here we go. Rapid fire time.
Let's see. I think I got a little bit more than you do, so you want to go ahead and do.
Yeah, we covered most of the books that I read. For a few, one is Daredevil number 24. This is another potential click of the week for me. This is, and my notes essentially in very brief order say, surprise, nothing goes the way you expect it to. Take it from the lawyer on the panel. I fully expected this issue written by Chip Zdarsky with art by Mike Hawthorne, inks by J.P. Mayer, and colors by Mattia Iacono. I fully expected the beginnings of a courtroom drama to play out. And no, I did not get that. None of us got that. It totally was a surprise as to how this was going to play out. Several players have revealed themselves in this long-form Daredevil story relatively recently. Once the battles of hell, the Battle of Hell's Kitchen kind of ended, and this fight to bring in Daredevil to answer for the death of a small-time criminal that he had a part in trying to apprehend. Once that legal battle is now essentially coming to a close, lots of players have entered this particular board. We've got Tony Stark doing a little bit. We've got Mike Murdock, who is come back into Zdarsky's story, playing a part. We also have Kirsten McDuffie, who came over from, I want to say, Mark Waid's run on Daredevil, coming in to play a part. And all of these characters come in, and like I said, nothing goes the way you expect it to. You don't get the courtroom drama, and at the end of this issue, we find ourselves with Daredevil heading back to some place where, if I'm not mistaken, Bendis last left him. And I want to say Fraction also put him there, but I'm not sure. I got to go back and look. But definitely Bendis back in the day. So I was surprised that this particular legal battle did not play out the way I thought it would. Next up is Killadelphia number 10. This is still a story that you can pick up because it's not that far along. We really are through one collected edition's worth of stories. This is, I believe, the second issue in the second kind of major story arc. I think the first arc really only lasted 8 issues. So we're only 2 issues into this this second big story arc for the Killadelphia series, written by Rodney Barnes, with art by Jason Sean Alexander, color by Luis Nicht, and lettering by Marshall Dillon. That's a cool name, for those history buffs out there. But lots of there's definitely some history being told here in terms of some of the characters who are proving to be more prominent in this second story arc. We get some backstory on how this particular character became a vampire, and we see more of the current offensive being waged by the vampires at the behest of Abigail Adams. And there are lots of moving parts in this story. It's sometimes hard to remember who's commanding what and where they're going, because there are definitely several players on this particular board who are moving, are kind of putting their own plans in motion. So I would definitely not start with this issue, but it's still early enough in this story that you can pick up the entire series and figure out what's going on. It's well worth your time. I think Roddy Cat will have read the next book I'm going to talk about, which is Shang-Chi number 3.
Yep.
Is written by Jean Luen Yang with art by D.K. Ruan. Philip Tan does the flashback art, and Sebastian Chang does the colors, and VC's Travis Lanham does the letters. We get a little bit more of a history lesson from Brother Saber, as he's explaining to Shang-Chi how the houses of the different houses have been scattered around the world. Shang-Chi gets to finally put on his newly designed costume, teased on the cover of issue #1, designed by Jim Chung. Sister Dagger is not exactly on board with Shang-Chi just yet. They're trying to do some practice, trying to take out these. What are they calling them? They're kind of like zombie-esque ninja. Jiangxi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So trying to work out their tactics to take them out using these paper talismans to take them out. Shang-Chi also reveals that he is slowly nursing an injury. I hate to say this, Shang-Chi is one of those dudes that would hide a zombie bite, apparently. So, I mean, that's sort of what is going on right now.
I mean, yeah.
But Sister Daggers walks in on Shang, having visions that are leading him to open up secret compartments in the house of the whatchamacallit, the house of the daggers, house of the deadly dagger, I think it is.
Yes.
Right. So Sister Dagger discovers this and basically chases him out of the house. He doesn't have a chance to explain. So Shang does what a lot of us do, which is do some research. He goes to the library. If it's not online, unfortunately, you do have to go to the library. So, he does his research and basically is in contact with Leiko Wu, who puts him onto the fact that Sister Hammer is in France right now at the Louvre doing a break-in, going after some stuff. And, the siblings join the fray. Brother Saber and Sister Dagger join the fray. And the three of them take on Sister Hammer and the minions. But it turns out that, Shang-Chi gets injured by an explosion. And that's when Brother Saber and Sister Dagger discover that essentially Shang has been bitten by a zombie, at least in a form. So that is going to be where we leave this issue.
Right, and then the only thing I'll just add is I basically said that Sister Dagger is the Damian Wayne of this equation, because she's pretty much kind of like that. But also the Jiangxi are pretty much are steeped in some lore, let's just say, so that you could actually look up and find out about if you so decide, if you don't already know, because I'm sure there are some people that probably already know about that stuff. And
no surprise, because Gene Wen Yang is definitely someone who does his homework on these things.
Mm-hmm. So that's always good to see. And yeah, the whole the thing about before Shang-Chi got chased off was that he thought it was his dad that was the ghost that was trying to talk to him, but apparently it was his uncle, which we found out a little bit, about what happened to him earlier in the issue, thanks to his dad. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that his dad was pretty much like his dad had hid his shrine on his other behind his dad hid his uncle's shrine behind his shrine, basically. But apparently, I don't know if the people in this house knew that or not when Sister Dagger came and chased him out. So that's pretty much that, though.
Yeah, that's it for me.
Oh yeah, and we do find out her name, her actual name, in the course of this issue, or at the end of this issue, which of course she would be named similarly to a cuckoo.
Of course, I was about to say, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm like, hey, we're reusing names here.
Yeah, I think it's a nice name, but I'm like, wow, she's got the same name as a cuckoo. Of course, it makes total sense. So yeah, so you said that is it for you.
A lot of this week. Okay.
Huh?
You read a lot this week.
A little bit. Injustice Year Zero, number 11. So after what happened with Jay, the League decided to move the rest of the dynamite to a box in space. But the Joker ended up being one step ahead of them. So basically, yeah, the Justice League was like, okay, the Joker. They found out that the Joker is behind us and the way he's possessing folks, and they get this plan to move the rest of the Justice Society and the League to the Watchtower, which they end up doing. But the Joker kind of already had a grasp on one of the members that they went to go escort to the Watchtower, and this person ends up causing some havoc at the end of this issue. So. Batman White Knight presents Harley Quinn #2, and so it's on. Harley versus Neo Joker until tea time, at least. We find out that they have some common ground, not just the fact of of whatever involvement with the Joker, and that apparently that's not the only person that they have a common involvement with, because Poison Ivy comes home and you find out that. It is implicated that her and Neo Joker might be an item. She says roommates, but she hesitated, so it goes how that goes. But anyway, and they also even say that's the story for another time. So I suspect there's probably going to be another miniseries at some point or an issue that's going to do something with that, which is fine. Let's see. Come to find out, it wasn't as cut and dry as we were led to believe, but there's no surprise there because of course, it was not Neo Joker that was the one behind the killings the serial killings that was happening. That it's somebody called the producer, and there's also someone else that they have now taken to call the Starlet, who we see pop up in this issue at the end of this issue, who has stricken again to I would say in my notes a Batman TAS icon. Let's just say someone that inspired Bruce Wayne, and you pretty much know about that. And I'm also calling to hear that the person that they're trying to find, this producer person, is probably somebody that's trying to get close to Harley right at this moment. Whether she knows it or not, or whether that ends up being the case, who's to see. And we also get a little bit more into backstory with Harley and Jack Napier, the Joker of this universe. Throughout the course of this issue. So yeah, like I said, I've been enjoying Joe Saracen, still enjoying it, so it's still good. Falcon and Winter Soldier #5. I'm actually surprised you hadn't read this.
I skimmed it. I wanted to give it another go.
Gotcha. So I won't spoil anything, but it's not that much different than the last few issues. But except for this is the last issue of the miniseries, and so
yeah, no, I read it. I just didn't go. I didn't look. I didn't read every line of dialogue. So you can spoil. I know what happened. So
yeah, it's really not much to it, honestly. But Sam and Bucky get their clocks cleaned, but get saved by the Natural's ADHD. You might as well say it, and the scuffle between Veronica Eden and Baron Zemo. And Veronica Eden pulls a Revenge of the Sith, which I found kind of amusing. I'm like, all right, cool. Sam finds the person who he was looking for, and it ends up kind of how you think it was. There was a couple of good pages in this issue where they're like, well, Sam and Bucky were like, well, half of these other Hydra agents are not going to let all of us stay alive, because you have Veronica who's trying to get control of Hydra. You have Baron Zemo also trying to do that, and they both have people under their control at that battle. So they were basically waiting. I was like, look, we need to get rid of some of these people so to kind of even the odds, because everybody's they're going to be after who's ever left, or take out whoever first. So that whole couple of pages when they go through that whole thing was pretty funny. So I enjoyed the issue, if not for that, than anything else. But this has been a fun book. They got that show coming up. So there was really no stakes in here, in this whole thing. But I think it's probably worth read because it's kind of fun. Anyway, Werewolf by Night #2. A They Live quote and a musically inspired beatdown starts this issue off okay, I guess. We do see where Red Wolf comes into the picture and is connected to this whole thing. And we also get a little bit of backstory into Jake's younger days, I guess, when he got his or before and or when he got his werewolf powers. and his dad is mentioned and shows shows images of him, but it doesn't look like Jack Russell that we know originally to be the Werewolf by Night. But we do see another image of the werewolf of Werewolf by Night. So we still don't necessarily know, whether there's any more connective tissue between those two characters, and and Jake, and I think his name is Jake. I don't want to. Yeah, Jake's, and his dad. What their connection to it is, but let's see. Yeah, and that's pretty much it on that one. It's all right. Fantastic Four Antithesis number 4. This is the last issue of this miniseries. Again, this is another one of those kind of like new story set in a time a while ago. This is pretty much set when Val was basically still a baby. So you got little Franklin. This is around that time of the Fantastic Four. But anyway, this Galactus's helmet is a little bit big for him. So basically, at the end of that last issue, Reed ended up in Galactus's suit of armor and took his place with the power cosmic and everything. Apparently, we find out in this issue he did it for a reason. Because part of this whole thing was like he wasn't feeling as smart as he normally would going through into this miniseries, and he was having doubts about his own worth to the team and to the family and whatnot. And we come to find out his reasons for why he did this was twofold. Because one, he wanted to get rid of the threat of Galactus, because he was like, well, he knows without having to feed, Galactus is gonna die, and therefore there will be no more Galactus. And also, he was trying to basically kickstart his brain because he was feeling like he wasn't as smart as he used to be. But of course, the family talked him down, and everything went back to normal. Galactus went back to, being Galactus. Silver Surfer kind of shuffled off with him, and the families was back together thanks to a plan with of Ben's actually, and Agatha Harkness, or with help by Agatha Harkness. So. And apparently we found out at the end of this that Galactus has a little bit of Reed with him. And since this is set at a long time ago, we can say that I guess that supposedly that little bit of humanity that Reed left with him in passing, or in passing on, supposedly it stayed with him. I don't know what they're supposed to get out of this whole thing, but like I said, this kind of seemed like one of those things that may supposedly lead to something else, or may even play into things that I've already done. Who even knows? But it is what it is. Power Pack number 1. Yeah, I know. Surprised I'm read this, given the shit I've given Power Pack. Shout out to Matt Wayne 97. I'm sure who's going to be all over this book. Wow, the first few pages are really befitting the origin they are retelling. Wow, I legit thought that the parents knew by now that the kids had powers. Apparently they still don't, even up until issue of Fantastic Four 26, which just came out last week, and some of that kind of gets not necessarily mentioned, but they do mention the fact that Alex and Julie are back from space. They just got back from space, which is also weirdly interesting because we found out something at the end of this, some bit of timing at the end of this, which we also actually go so far as saying this is also a part of the Outlawed miniseries, which been delayed, and that kind of plays into some of this. So it's actually pretty good that Fantastic Four 26 came out. Now whether that was a change or whether that was supposed to naturally happen, we don't know. But like I said, because they're back on Earth and the family's back together again, that kind of plays into some things. So anyway, Jack says yeet in a kind of not right way, but right way, which is kind of weird. Good thing Fantastic Four 26 came in after this, like I just mentioned, but no need to go on that. When it did, or this would be confusing or different. Oh yeah, the whole thing is from the youngest Katie's perspective. And there's a news break that kind of starts off the rest of the issue that sounds like a trap. Whether it was or not, it doesn't really matter. The Power Pack is back, and they're going up against an old enemy that I know nothing about. And this Nico Leon art is very nice. It's kind of actually pretty good, and so are the colors, which are befitting this book. As I said just now, this is an Outlaw tie-in, um, which I said in my notes that a couple of kids should have known about by now. But the way this is set, it is pretty much right after Kamala Law goes into effect, because they even say in the book, it was like, "Hey, it's actually 6 o'clock, and this new law just got put in effect." So this is pretty much sets the time frame of when this book is about to solve. And also, you can also say by relation, Fantastic Four 26, because seeing that they just, or half of the group just came back from space in that issue last week. They're in that. Otherwise, it's wasn't a bad issue, I guess. Like I said, Power Pack is not necessarily one of my favorite groups in the Marvel universe, but sure, they have a place, I guess. And I think it's only a mini series, so it doesn't matter one way or the other. Last book but not least, I didn't really get a chance to read this, so there's not really much I can say about it outside of it might be worth checking out. In that, the other history of the DC universe just came out this week. Number 1, it's written by John Ridley, who you know from 12 Years a Slave and other things. And it is a lot of text and with some graphics along with it, and it looks like the perspective of it is from well, at least it starts off from what I read. Starts off with from the perspective of one Jefferson Pierce, aka Black Lightning, and it kind of goes through a lot of that, and I think the whole thing might be going through the whole thing. Like I said, I hadn't really read the whole thing, but going through it, you can tell the perspective of it's from, and it's definitely from Black Lightning's perspective. So looks like it might be worth checking out a little bit more, but like I said, I don't know, I'll give more impressions later after I finish checking it out. And that is it for me.
All right, clicks of the week time.
Mm-hmm. And we already got a couple of clicks of the week from our other hosts. Dirt is, and let me pull up his note again, actually. Devil's Highway, number 5 of 5, apparently. Vet solves her father's murder by uncovering a serial killer ring hidden within the long-haul trucker community. Series ends with a lot of material for more stories. And come to find out and looking up this thing, this is a Benjamin Percy book, which may pique the interest of one Agent 70. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, at the end of the day, this is published under AWA Studios, so there's always a place for some of these slightly well, let's say the non-superhero books, because we do tend to focus on the superhero books with the random kind of image style indie books that we get a chance to read, but we don't always get access to all of the publications every week. So AWA is something we haven't really dove into yet. So it's nice that PCN_Dirt is giving that publishing house some love.
Sure. And the second book that we got is from Tim, which is Ten of Swords, Destruction number 1 for his click. I kind of almost want to second that because it was pretty good, but I'm not.
I was about to say I'm going to not choose Ten of Swords Destruction number 1 as my click of the week, but definitely back Tim up on that because it really was well done. In terms of an issue ending a big crossover event, it actually did pretty well. In terms of setting the new status quo without having an aftermath issue, like an official other aftermath issue, we actually do get part of the next part of the story here. Although we will probably see some fallout issues, as I mentioned earlier. I am going to go with Dr. Doom number 9 because I literally was cackling reading this issue. I was cackling, laughing. Like, seriously, LOL at Doom. So, shout out to Christopher Cantwell and Sal LaRocca on that. Dr. Doom number 9 is my click of the week.
Nice. Yeah, for myself, like I said, yeah, there's definitely a couple of them. Both those picks are really pretty good. You can't go wrong with either one of those. Um, I'm thinking though, I'm probably just that Falcon and Winter. Shout out that Falcon and Winter Soldier book because that was actually a fun read. Like I said, just didn't really go anywhere to do anything, but it was kind of just a fun action book. But I think, yeah, I probably will just go ahead and back up Tim on 10 of Swords Destruction.
Nice.
Because I do like the way a lot of that kind of played out, and especially when the Cavalry comes in. And everything just kind of happens. Because, like, the ending I felt slightly low clean to me, but at the same time, we also know there was, well, not fully clean because we know there's a bunch of loose ends that's going to come back, but clean enough to where it's like, well, there you go for that part of it. But it had to end some kind of way, so I can't be mad at the way it ended.
Part of me is like, yo, I know it's a corn. I'm sure it's a well and often taken picture, in the action figure comic book art community. I feel like I want to drag out a Doctor Doom figure and put his hands up and have him yell out, like in the pose, yell out, Richard! After reading that Doctor Doom issue, seriously, I'm enthusiastic about catching up on that series now. So.
Yeah, like I said, you should. It's a pretty good series. Like I said, it's not the most action focused because it kind of just like it is what it is. Like it's especially like this is probably one of the most action, if anything, that you've seen. And there wasn't a whole lot of action in this issue, but because of more exposition than anything, but that's kind of how the book's been. But it's still good. The book doesn't have to necessarily have a fight in it to be good every issue.
Of course.
So there is that, and that is the clicks of the week. But yeah, Doctor Doom is actually pretty good. Go check it out. Now we'll go on, before we get to the news section, get to an ad read.
All right, folks, we are in our post-Thanksgiving food coma. What better way to help ease our way into or out of that food coma other than with Wink, your personalized wine club. Wink is a world of wine delivered right to your door. From rosé to Cabernet to Torrontés, Wink has over 100 styles of wine to discover. Have you ever tried an orange wine? Wink connects you to a world of exclusive wines tailored to your tastes and delivered directly to your door. Wink delivers 4 bottles of wine to you every month with free shipping. You can pick your own bottles or let Wink choose and match to your taste. It doesn't cost a thing to become a member, and you can skip or cancel anytime. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can enjoy an exclusive discount of $20 off your first order. To place your first order with $20 off and to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us/wink. That's cspn.us/WINC. Wink Wines through CSPN. Do it today. Now we get into the news. Cat's gotta unmute himself.
Doggone it. I thought I had unmuted. Anyway, now we get into the news section as I transition over and start a new recording. Cinematic news. And we start off with some sad news, actually. A couple of bits of sad news. And this first one actually happened the day we recorded last week. Now that I think about it, and I just didn't mention it then. But Kirby Morrow, XMen Evolution's Cyclops, and Dragon Ball Z's Goku, which that part I didn't know, dies at 47. Canadian actor, voice actor Kirby Morrow, known for, like I said, the aforementioned Cyclops and X-Men Evolution, and Moroku. Oh, that's Moroku. And Inuyasha, in Goku in the Ocean dub of Dragon Ball Z. Okay, that's probably why I didn't recognize that. Has passed away. He was 47 years old. Apparently, Kirby Morrow was also a part of had some parts in the Stargate franchise, which I did not know of also. Maybe he was in, I don't know what part of Stargate he was in. But, yeah. Let's see, I don't know if it says what he passed away from. Oh, it says also Captain Dave climbed in Stargate Atlantis. Okay, that makes some sense. So then there's some of that he didn't see, but he's also been in a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily say here what he passed away from though. But condolences to his friends and family and all in that. Next up.
In other sad news, David Hemblin, the actor whose measured, distinguished performance as Magneto on X-Men The Animated Series endeared him to a generation of fans, passed away on November 16th at the age of 79. Hemblin was also well regarded for his performance as the Resistance leader Jonathan Dawes on the first 4 seasons of syndicated sci-fi television series Earth Final Conflict, which was developed based off of ideas of Star Trek's Gene Roddenberry. Okay.
Oh wow, I remember that show. Yeah. Yeah. Again, condolences. Next up, a problematic Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends episode carries a warning on Disney Plus. Which I meant to check out this episode, but so Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, basically is episode Sunfire, which introduces that character to the Amazing Friends part of the animated universe. Apparently, is going to have a viewer warning at the beginning of it about dealing with not dealing with, but having to do with racially insensitive content, because this was done at a different time and there were certain tropes stereotypical tropes in that show and a couple others in that series that, probably wouldn't sit right these days, especially having to do with that character. And according to this, apparently the Red Skull episode, which I figured there was an episode or two missing, is not on Disney Plus for, I guess, a similar reason. So according to this article, but yeah. But it says here the disclaimer states that the episode contains negative depictions of people and cultures. Disney Plus, Disney Plus, according to this article, chooses to acknowledge the problematic and racist portrayals in Sunfire instead of removing the episode from the streaming service entirely, unlike what happened to the Quest for the Red Skull episode. So there you go. Next up.
Next up is some stuff we already talked about, so I might skip to the next one if that's okay.
Yeah. Basically, this has to do with the Mandalorian and the whole Moff Gideon thing. So yeah, push on.
Exactly. For anyone who wants to review that, you can go back to our discussion on the Mandalorian episode, last week's Mandalorian episode, actually. Next up, the Mandalorian wearing Bo-Katan's armor brought Katie Sackhoff to tears, and I cannot blame her. Playing a prominent role in the animated series Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Bo-Katan Kryze made her live-action debut in Disney Plus's The Mandalorian. Actor Katie Sackhoff, revealed in an interview with Variety that she was moved to tears the first time she wore Bo-Katan Kryze's armor, admitting that she was overwhelmed, quote, overwhelmed and so excited, end quote, to be in the same outfit as the character she had voiced in the Clone Wars. It was an emotional moment she believed encompassed her stepping up into something greater than herself or yourself, as she readied herself to become a part of The Mandalorian. She states that Dave Filoni was there the first time she had her whole costume on, and she had tears in her eyes. She was so overwhelmed and so excited.
Oh, go Starbuck.
Yeah, I'm happy for her. That must have been a really cool moment.
Right. But also, on the other side of that, kind of sad for other characters in other films, which we've already kind of talked about. So, but, It
Right.
is.
It's one thing when they literally design the character after the voice actor.
Right.
It's like, all right, that's pretty cool, and I feel like if she doesn't walk away from this show with a set of Bo-Katan armor, it would be kind of bad.
Yeah, no, I would not be. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Next up, still on the Mandalorian train, though, Pedro Pascal shares retro style Chapter 12 poster. Um, so apparently there is someone someone made a retro style poster of the Mandalorian, which you can see on the video of this here podcast if you are watching it. So, and you should check it out sometime on, by the way. For last week's episode, Chapter 12, uh, with the title of Old School, which was not the title of the episode, but still, it looks good. It definitely has a retro feel to it, and it does it say here? Wait, let me say who made it. Illustrated by the artist at the Butcher Billy, on Twitter, I guess, or Instagram. It says on Instagram through Pedro Pascal's fan page, I guess. So yeah, that's cool. Next up.
All right, next up, the CW Stargirl finds its latest JSA member, Jakeem Thunder. The CW Stargirl has cast the originals alum Alkoya Brunson to play Jakeem Thunder, the new wielder of the Thunderbolt pen, in a recurring role. According to Decider, Alkoya Brunson will join Season 2 in a recurring role as Jakeem Thunder, the new wielder of the Thunderbolt pen. Brunson's casting hits 2 weeks after comedian Jim Gaffigan was announced to voice Thunderbolt, a wish-granting creature from the fifth dimension. In the comics, Jakeem Williams is Johnny Thunder's successor. He received Johnny's pink pen by accident, only later discovering the, quote, genie inside, Thunderbolt, a creature from the fifth dimension. A reluctant hero, Jakeem eventually took up the name Jakeem Thunder. He was invited into the JSA by Courtney Stargirl Whitmore and became friends with Rick Tyler, aka Our Man, who also appears on the CW series. And my reaction to this is
Who?
I when I saw this article, I was kind of curious as to why they went with Jakeem Thunder, and I also was curious as to I wonder if that had any, or if Jakeem Thunder's recent showing in Teen Titans, or relatively recent showing in Teen Titans, had anything to do with that, in a sense. Not necessarily directly, but like, because this is a character that hadn't been out there for a while, so that's kind of interesting. Anyway, next up, though, Legends of Tomorrow homages Dr. Strangelove with Mass Effect actor Nick Bishop will guest star in Season 6 episode Bay of Squids as Warmonger General Kilgore, who encourages John F. Kennedy to launch World War III after an alien presence is detected in Cuba. It falls to Nate Haywood and Zaria Tarazi to stop him. The episode is meant to riff on the classic Stanley Kubrick film Dr. Strangelove, or How I Love to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. And if people who are Mass Effect fans who don't know who that is, apparently this is a person who was in Mass Effect Andromeda. So we got this. I'm sure fans of that series would probably know what that reference was to. Next up, though.
Alrighty, next up, new Justice League photo reveals Deathstroke's return in the Snyder Cut. The Mercenary is sporting a new look for Zack Snyder's Justice League. More information about the HBO Max miniseries is gradually making its way to the internet. Recently, it was revealed that additional photography took place with Joe Manganiello reprising his role of Deathstroke, as well as Jared Leto back as the Joker with a new look. Now Manganiello has given us our best look yet at Deathstroke in the Snyder Cut with a new picture posted to his Twitter, captioned, "Heroes and villains can put their differences aside for an important cause." The major difference between this version of the Mercenary and the glimpse we caught of him in the theatrical Justice League post-credit scene is a hardcore new haircut. the Mohawk is now I got to look at this. The Mohawk is a pretty dramatic change, so it's easy to speculate that this and Joker's road weary new style are from a nightmare vision of the future, like the one. Oh, who cares? Now I got to look at this picture.
So if you're watching the video, you see the picture in question, and yeah, it's Deathstroke with a mohawk, which almost kind of makes him look like either a Michael Rooker or oh god, what's his name from Cheers? Woody Harrelson. Kind of looks like either one of them with this haircut. But anyway, sure. New Wonder Woman 84 TV spots show off new footage ahead of December release. So last week we talked about Wonder Woman's going to be out on Christmas on HBO Max. But anyway, originally Wonder Woman 1984 was meant to reach cinemas in December 2019 before all of those delays, as well as full-length trailers. We've now been treated to 2 brand new TV spots showing off a little bit more of Wonder Woman 1984. The first sees a young Diana Prince, played by Lily Aspel, as well as the Amazons taking part in some seriously intense sports. According to this article, there's loads of golden lasso swinging, Gal Gadot's Diana and Chris Pine's Steve Trevor together, and Wonder Woman in her new golden armor. Of course, a lot of the stuff we've seen, in spots in the past. But those are out there. You can go check out. And the second spot is more focused on Kristen Wiig as Cheetah, with a new look at the fight between her and Diana, which is also, like, if you've seen the one main trailer, you've kind of seen bits and pieces of both of these TV spots, basically. So, yeah, there is, though. Next up, HBO Max has picked up DMZ series from Ava DuVernay. It's been reported that it's been picked up by HBO Max a year after it was announced. Oh wait, I think you missed mine.
Oh, did I miss one? I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Keep doing that one.
Oh, wait a second. Titan Share. Oh, okay. You'll take that one.
Yeah, I'll take that one.
Let's see. HBO Max has announced that the series has placed an order for the limited series, which will contain 4 episodes. Patino will serve. That is Roberto Patino. Will serve as showrunner and will write all 4 parts of the show. Production on DMZ is scheduled to begin sometime in 2021. Okay.
Cool beans. Let's see. Oh. Titans share a peek at Starfire's Season 3 costume. So ahead of its full reveal, which was a few days ago, HBO Max's Titans have offered a glimpse of the new costume the DC Comics' Starfire will wear in Season 3, and you can get glimpses of said reveal in the article in here. And if you're watching the video, you can kind of see the shots that they kind of pieced together. They basically did like puzzle pieces of shots, and they put them together. But that at the time that I pulled this article wasn't all put together, but nevertheless, you get the idea. Next up,
Pink Panther live-action CGI film is currently in development at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, with Sonic the Hedgehog director Jeff Fowler set to helm the project. The big cat first appeared in the 1963 film bearing his name. Blake Edwards is the Pink Panther, but he wasn't the star. The comedy follows bumbling French police detective Inspector Clouseau, Peter Sellers, as he seeks to prevent the theft of the Pink Panther, a large pink diamond with a fault that resembles a leaping panther. The cartoon panther only appears in the opening and closing credits of the film and of almost every other film in the franchise that followed, right up to 2009's The Pink Panther 2, starring Steve Martin as Clouseau. Okay.
I kind of wish we had the music clip, music stinger of the Pink Panther, but that's fine. Y'all already heard it in your head. Yeah, either that one or the end of it, one of the two. But either way, it would have worked. So. There you go. All right, The Expanse season 5 will draws from the books 5 and 6. Expanse showrunner Naren Shankar revealed new details about the show's upcoming 5th season, including that the plot was inspired by elements from books 5 and 6 in the James S.A. Corey book series. quote unquote. You know how it works over the years, how it's worked over the years. It's like certain storylines get pulled forward, others stuff gets pushed back sometimes. Shankar told Entertainment Weekly. Character elements got combined into other stuff. There's definitely some elements of book 6 in this season, I would say, but it's largely drawn from book 5. And then the article goes in on talking about the 5th book, which is called Nemesis Games and all that stuff. The Expanse is a good show. You should check it out. That's all I'm going to say. I need to catch up on the 5th season. Or actually the last couple of seasons, but regardless. Next up.
All right. Well, I guess we're transitioning to comic book news now.
Yes, we are.
All right. Here's our transition.
Before I do that, actually, I would say that check out the clickbait section because there's a couple of good things and there's not much, but there's a couple of things. There's a story in there about the actress who who's a deaf actress who plays in the Miles Morales Spider-Man game. And there's an article with her about that, and apparently they even use some ASL in Miles Morales Spider-Man game, so that's pretty cool. And also there's a Twitter link to what was Stan Lee on the F word. I guess it was a voice recording that a sound engineer made, and that was set to some animation that was basically Stan Lee talking about the use of the F word. It's pretty cool, and you should check it out. Anyway, the Phoenix Force comes to Earth in Avengers 40 preview. So Marvel has released a preview of Javier Garron's interior pages from Avengers number 40, in which the Phoenix Force returns to the Earth this December to find a new host. In fact, it'll find a whole host of hosts, as this article says, recruiting the Avengers, some X-Men, and more into a tournament to be the new permanent bearer of its power. Another contest of champions, Roddy postulates, or maybe it can't be Seconds to Swords. We already done that. Anyway, the infamous Firebird of cosmic destruction and rebirth known as Freedom Force has returned to Earth to find a new avatar, reads the solicitations, yada, yada, yada. And you can see preview pages in the article below. Next
up, Marvel has released a preview of interior pages from writer Leah Williams and artist David Baldion's X Factor number 5, which puts the X Factor investigations team back in their regular stories on the trail of a mystery surrounding Adam X, also known as Extreme, in Mojo World. In the pages, the X Factor team watches as Adam X hosting a Hot Ones style online show called Adam X's Hot Seat, follows an audience vote and murders the mutant wind dancer on camera, effectively creating a mutant snuff film. It's a disturbing scene that will definitely require serious follow-up from Krakoa's mutant investigators who seek out proof of death in order to resurrect murdered mutants. As North Star dryly observes, proof of death for a wind dancer seems all too readily available. Okay.
Right, so this is basically taken off from the stuff that was before Ten of Swords happened. Matter of fact, I don't think X Factor only had like one issue in the event. If that.
No, I think they only had one issue.
But yeah, before that, the whole thing with Wind Dancer and her murder happened before this, and yeah, they had gotten to a point with it, so apparently this is continuing on that. And I was just gonna say that, yeah, it's gonna be weird getting back to regular issues after Ten of Swords is now wrapped up. But here we are, or here we will be. Excuse me, sorry.
That's Roddy Cat's tea coming back and taking a piece out of him.
Actually, no, it was me needing to drink some tea because for some reason, it's, yeah, anyway.
I just thought it was funny where Roddy Cat was actually pointing out the fact that he had tea at the ready.
Of course. Of course. For these times. Reign of X era to begin in X-Men comics at Marvel. So yeah, we kind of teased this already, but Marvel Comics' current Dawn of X era will come to an end this December, giving way to a new post Ten of Swords status quo under the banner Reign of X. We actually did mention that part about it because yeah, at the end of the preview page for what's coming next at the end of Ten of Swords kind of mentions sort of. the Reign of X era will kick off next week. Immediately followed basically this week's. So it's after this week, it starts next week. The announcement came in the form of a teaser art drawn by Mahmoud Asrar, tweeted by writer Cy Spurrier, then shared widely by Marvel. Though he's not currently known to be working on any X-Men titles, Spurrier has plenty of X-Men experience on his resume, meaning he'll likely be joining the X Office in some capacity in the Reign of X era. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, I was going to mention that X-Force is not a book that we have right now, correct?
I'm sorry?
X-Force.
X-Force?
Yeah, we do.
And Percy book? Yeah.
Okay, so never mind. So that was because I was like, I feel like we're missing a book that hasn't started yet, and I couldn't remember if it was X-Force because I know because of the event, kind of muddying some stuff up. I couldn't remember if it was X-Force or it could be like Gen X or something else that they might pop out for something new. I feel like even some of those data pages kind of bore out something. Like when they were talking about like, hey, this is the status of the use of the word X-Men and Force Directive and that kind of stuff, kind of bear out that sounds like there might have been another book coming, but it could be me thinking some kind of way.
Right. I mean, I think specifically the X-Men, in terms of the group label,
right?
Considering that it had such deep, it has such a deep cachet amongst the people in the Marvel universe that I understood why they might have ruled as a council to stop using that because it doesn't represent all of them, but there's a point in this issue where the name has to come back into use. So in that issue, X-Men number 15.
Yeah, they say that in the data pages. But yeah, and at the bottom of this article are basically the books that are coming out in the month of December under the Reign of X banner, which is pretty much all of them, and including that Wolverine thing. And yeah, X-Force is right there. So there you go. Next up, Marvel pulls WEB of Spider-Man from their schedule. The absence of WEB of Spider-Man and several other series in Marvel's February 2021 solicitations raised lots of eyebrows, and now we know more about what's happening. That particular series is being postponed indefinitely. Marvel informed retailers late Thursday evening that the first 2 issues of the series have been unscheduled for the time being, although no reason was given for the change. Read between the lines, however, and a picture emerges. This 5-issue series by Kevin Shinnick and Alberto Jimenez Albuquerque is a tie-in to an upcoming Disney Parks ride that was announced to debut in 2021, so I guess they're going to hold it closer to the debut of the ride. Sure, because that matters a lot. But yeah, it makes sense. Also, I read WEB like that. I think of the writer WEB.
Exactly.
I'm like, that's a weird title, but all right. Spider-Man Remastered on PS5 now supports saves from the PS4 version. And so yeah, apparently a recent patch from Insomniac has made that thing so. So now if you have the PS4 version of the regular game, you can use your same save file on the remastered version of the 2018 Spider-Man game on the PS5 if you bought, the Miles Morales pack with that in it, or bought it separately. One of the two. Also, they also put the 2 suits back. Well, they put the 2 new suits that they said that they were bringing out, that they were going to put in the remastered version into the original version of the PS4 Spider-Man, because I saw that a couple of days ago when I looked in there. So there's that to look forward to, and also the patch of this if you so inclined. Next up,
Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales game names an in-game street after Chadwick Boseman. So with the game out and getting pretty positive responses from fans and critics, people can find while adventuring in Insomniac's recreation of New York City, there are pretty interesting references and Easter eggs. Most recently, an eagle-eyed player noticed a street named after the late actor Chadwick Boseman. Boseman Way was discovered and shared by Reddit user u/RaleighDell. It replaces 42nd Street and can be found between 1st and 3rd in Midtown on the right-hand side of the map. Putting Boseman Way in substitute for 42nd Street is likely a reference to the film 42, where Boseman played baseball legend Jackie Robinson, who played for the Brooklyn Dodgers. That's pretty cool. So between 1st and 3rd, so that's like 2 blocks of 42nd between 1st and 2nd Avenue. That's like it's essentially going right up to Grand Central Station.
Yeah, but being that the scale of the game is not to the direct scale, is probably a little bit less than that. Like it's an amalgamation of it, so they probably compress it to where it's probably like 1 block instead of 2 or whatever you're saying.
Well, first, yeah, I was about to say, so there's no 2nd Avenue.
Right, more than likely, or it's probably 2nd or 3rd. Sometimes the way they do it, like they compress the map so that it's not a 1-to-1 to New York.
I was about to say in real life, like I said, that's leading right up to whatchamacallit, to Grand Central Station. So it's not quite, first up to 3rd Avenue. Yeah, it's not quite there, but it's on the way.
Right. So, and that's kind of cool because they've done little things like that. Like I do remember in the original Spider-Man game, they did like if you were on the side of one particular building, you could see a mirror image of the Twin Towers. In the reflection, which is a weird thing to come across when you did not know that, but also it was kind of cool when you notice it. But it was like, wow, that's kind of freaky because you turn around and it's like, wait, that's not there, but also that's kind of freaky. So, not the first time they've done stuff like that. So I haven't been able to check this out yet, even though I do have the game, but I haven't played it yet. So I'll, rest assured when I come across it, I will be taking pictures. But next up, Star Wars C-3PO and Asajj Ventress receive Gentle Giant busts. Gentle Giant Limited continues to impress with their Star Wars statue busts as they announce 2 new ones that are on the way. These 2 new statues span over the Star Wars generations, with one from Star Wars Clone Wars and Rise of the Skywalker. Excuse me. Up first is from the Clone Wars is Count Dooku's Sith assassin, Asajj Ventress. She stands 6 inches tall, but will be 8 inches tall with her dual lightsabers are extended. Asajj Ventress will also have a removable cloak, letting the collectors display her how they want. The piece is limited to 1,500 pieces and is a must, according to this article, is a must-have for any fan of the animated series. The next is the C-3PO, was also limited to 1,500 pieces. And apparently, so this is where the Rise of Skywalker thing, it is C-3PO with Babu Frick.
Oh, God.
I was just waiting for that to come from Agent 70. Coming from the newest film in the Skywalker saga, C-3PO needs a new hard repair to read ancient Sith text. Babu Frick gladly helps, and now you can bring them both home. The 6-inch tall statue bust shows the depowered protocol droid as Babu Frick tinkers with his head. These busts are highly detailed. Also, I think both of these are going for $120 and set to be released in May 2021. But pre-orders are already live. Oh wait, I'm sorry. No, yeah, they're pretty much $120 for either one of these. And you can see, if you're watching the video, you can see pictures of both of those busts. Next.
All right, in video game news, now that the PS5 and Xbox Series X are finally out and competing with one another, gamers can start to see which of the two next-gen consoles offers the best performance. It's a question that's been debated over for months before their launch, but in the case of upscaling current-gen games like Star Wars Squadrons, it seems like the Xbox Series X is at an advantage. Earlier this month, EA revealed that Squadrons would receive a number of enhanced visual options on next-gen consoles, and today those were added in a sizable new patch, Update 3.0. As one might expect, these enhancements bump up the game's resolution and frame rate beyond what the PS4 and Xbox One are capable of, but what's notable is that, for the most part, they are exclusive to the Xbox Series X and Series S. Okay, have fun out there, you guys.
But hey, if you got a PC version, you probably don't care about it because I'm sure that version's probably going to get it also. Yeah. Green Lantern. So there's footage from a canceled SNES game that resurfaces that apparently has something to do with Green Lantern. So it says gameplay footage from the Green Lantern's canceled 1990s video game has finally surfaced online. A recent installment of a YouTube series, Game History Secrets, which is hosted on the Digital Gaming channel, reveals that the first ever footage of Ocean Software, wow, that's a name I hadn't heard in a minute, Green Lantern game, which was in development for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System before ultimately being scrapped. I believe Ocean is owned by EA, so it'll probably never see the light, or was owned by EA. I'm not sure if that's still the case. Either way, it's probably not going to see the light of day. For decades, the unreleased project has remained largely shrouded in mystery, with memories of it being kept alive by archived magazine scans and enthusiast websites picking up the pieces, according to a host of Game History Secrets. Thanks to the efforts of game historians, then yeah, we got footage of this game regardless. And you can check it out on the channel mentioned and the video that is in the article, which is in the show notes. Next.
All right. Why? Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok are planning a Three Jokers sequel. DC's Black Label's Three Jokers may get a sequel. Well, I say may. Hot on the heels of the finale of DC's Batman Three Jokers limited series, writer Jeff Johns says there's talk of a sequel. Jason Fabok and I do have a story that we want to tell that springs off one of the many epilogues written within it, and we can't really talk much more about that right now, though. Johns tells CBR. Okay.
I mean, I guess it makes sense considering we got Dark Knight's Metal, which is a spinoff of the stuff he did, or stuff they did. It wasn't him, but yeah. So it's not surprising that there's more spinoffs and stuff. I know Agent 70 was kind of grunting at this news before the show, which I get.
I mean, the series was okay, but I mean, does it really necessitate a follow-up?
And that's never stopped. Obviously, that's never stopped. Well, DC period, but just any of the publishers from doing any of this stuff.
Yeah, seriously, to quote our man at Eclectic, DC stays losing.
Definitely. Shout out to Eclectic. Jason Todd forced to face his internal demons in new Red Hood arc. And this is an article that is an interview with writer Sean Martinborough, who spoke to Newsarama about this 2-issue arc that he's going to be doing leading into Future State. So it's basically a 2-issue arc where Jason Todd, that's going to basically send apparently Jason back to a place that hasn't, a place in Gotham that hasn't really shown up in, according to this, 19 years that Sean Martinborough and Christopher Priest made back then, called The Hill. So Jason Todd's going to be visiting there and kind of dealing with some internal issues. And I think a couple of new folks are going to be introduced or reintroduced. I'm not sure. I guess reintroduced in this 2-issue arc. And since, according to this article, it can't really be nothing that's going to be far-reaching because things are going into Future State. It's just kind of doesn't really have any stakes in it, but it's still some things that's going to get brought up. So, next up.
All right. What are we on now?
Superboy.
One of the standout creations of DC's Rebirth era was the reformation of the modern-day Super Son, Superboy, and series debuting later this year in Challenge of the Super Sons. They take a page from modern social media for the big MacGuffin, Doomscroll. Whomever, we can never tell, has their name inscribed on this ancient and magical parchment will be killed post haste, reads DC's synopsis of the series. Now, the evil powers that be have written the names of the Justice League on the deadly dock. Superboy and Robin are the only ones who can save their dads from certain doom. The catch? No one can know it was the boys that saved them. This Death Note-esque Super Sons limited series is by writer Peter J. Tomasi along with artists Max Raynor, Jorge or George Corona, and Evan Stanley. This picks up from Tomasi's two previous Super Son series, which spun out of his 2016 to 2017 run on the Superman title. This debuts December 14th, digital first, with plans for print editions the following year, in 2021.
You have to forgive Agent 70, he's getting sleepy. It's been a long day for him, so... Anyway, DC Future State presents DC Nation presents Future State. Magazine is now out, and people can go and read it online or get it from Comixology. Regardless, it's free one way or the other. It's a 32-page issue that basically goes into, the stuff that DC Future State is going to deal with. So you can check that out yourself at the couple of places, a couple of links in the show notes. Or if you've already seen it, it's out there on Comixology. Next up.
Last but not least, Thrawn meets Green Lantern in Image Comics' new cosmic superhero series, Radiant Black. In an electrifying fusion of alien technology and superhuman heroics, Image Comics is presenting a new creator-owned sci-fi fantasy series spawned by writer Kyle Higgins of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and the Rise of Ultraman, and acclaimed artist Marcelo Costa of Self-Made, that's launching on February 10th, 2021, and Sci-Fi Wire is powering up an exclusive preview of the premiere issue. This refreshing take on the genre is an ode to costumed crusaders, adding a modern sheen to the legacy of superhero stories and hoping to stir the minds of a new generation. Rounding out the creative team on this project are Becca Carey on lettering and series editor Michael Busutil. Radiant Black's plotline stars Nathan Burnett, a frustrated young man who's just turned 30. He's struggling to find his true path in life while enduring two pointless jobs, mounting credit card bills, and the humiliation of having to move back to his parents' house as a last resort. However, things change in a flash when he encounters a miniature black hole one drunken night. Curious as to its meaning, Nathan accidentally unlocks an unearthly, ethereal force that transforms him into a super being with the power to radically change his fortunes. But these mysterious powers don't exactly belong to him. Now, the cosmic entities who created them want them returned by any means necessary. Okay.
It is interesting that Kyle Higgins is the one who's doing that because, like you said, Ultraman, which that Rise of Ultraman miniseries is, I feel like they kind of have shades of this. But I was going to say in passing that there's another article. The first article I found on this particular series that is coming up says instead of Thrawn meets Green Lantern, says Spider-Man meets Power Rangers from according to Newsarama. So there's two different takes on. I just found it amusing that there's two different takes on, the combinations of the same thing. Which one might be, well, they all can play, but I can kind of see one over the other in this case, given what was just mentioned. But that's the thing. I might check that one out actually, because I've actually been enjoying that Rise of Ultraman series, and I did like Higgins's Power Rangers series, at least from what I remember reading of it. So cool beans. That is that, and we are coming to the end of this here podcast. But first, an ad read.
And you know what we read when it's late and we want to keep it quick? Keep our podcast free by shopping at Amazon. Visit cspn.us, then click the Keep Our Podcast Free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down and click on the Amazon link to shop. Purchase items from Amazon as you normally would, whether it's books, music, electronics, jewelry, apparel, or Marvel Legends figures. For every purchase made on Amazon through our link, Amazon sends the CSPN a payment that helps us keep the Comic Book Chronicles podcast free for listeners at no extra cost to you. Amazon.com through CSPN.us. Do it today.
All right, folks. Yeah, I might have to do something with that last part because you definitely ducked out. So that is it, folks. That's the end of the show. Hopefully, your rest of the weekend will go great. This long weekend that a lot of you folks have. For some of us, it's just a Friday. Thank you very much for being here. I have been Radicat, your host. You can find me at Radicat on Twitter, News Nerds Need on Twitter, CBCaps on Instagram, Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram, PC_Dirt on Twitter, PopCultureNet on Twitter, PopCultureNetwork.com and his umbrella sites therein, and also probably still on Byte under Comic Reviews, no vowels. The Osiris Ish, Tim DOGG98 on Twitter. You can go find him at that there. CB Chron on Twitter, which is the Comic Book Chronicles Twitter account. News Nerds, nope, sorry, he has nothing to do with that. That's just me. The Click Nation, however, is him. That's TheKliqNation on Twitter and theclicknation.com. Also, of course, Comic Book Resources, where he's over there writing his face off. And of course, you can find this here podcast on the Coastal of the Podcast Network. That's CSPN.us.
Do it today.
That's right. Do it today. And do it every day. Boom. Also, you can find this podcast on your podcast personal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the Coastal Leather Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. Which again, like I said, the last week's show might have been split into, well, it's been split into on SoundCloud, so don't worry about it. But I'm not sure. It'll be fine. It's probably in one place, other places. But you can also check us out here next week. So what's?
Clear next week on a regular Thursday.
Wait, what'd you say? Because I can't hear you.
So we're clear next week on a regular scheduled date.
Oh, we're clear. Yeah. So nothing's really going on next week. So yeah, we'll be back here next Thursday night, not Friday. Next Thursday night, same bat time, same bat channel, 9:30 p.m. on the aforementioned Twitch channel. That's twitch.tv/Comic Book Chronicles, or you can also watch us at the same time recording on youtube.com/theclicknation. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, with that then, this has been the Comic Book Chronicles. Peace.
Peace. One.
Wakanda forever!